Strouse.
Here.
Mr. Donahue.
Here.
Mr. Hammond.
Here.
Ms. McCready.
Here.
Mr. McQueen.
Here.
Mr. O'Day.
Here.
Ms. Avera.
Here.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News, Courier News, and the Star Ledger, filed with the municipal clerk, and posted on the municipal bulletin board on January 3rd, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. No presentations. We have minutes from January 27th and February 10th. Any corrections or amendments? Someone like to move them?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay. We will now have an open session where the public is invited to make a statement or share a comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and so come up, introduce yourself, and say where you are from, where you live. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Looks like it's you. Come on up.
Is this mic here?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tom Ock. I'm a resident of Bernardsville. It's 30 Chestnut Avenue. I'll make this very quick. I'm stopping by just to ask for your support with regards to paving the one-way section of Chestnut this year. I was in touch with John last year. It's kind of been patched and repatched. Maybe we've been there for 10 years. Love the street. Gets quite a bit of traffic in the morning and then in the afternoon with buses and traffic and so on. And it's kind of at a point where we can't walk at night because of the significant potholes. But I have to tell you, the Public Works last year, they were great about coming out. There's a lot of water. We were concerned about mosquitoes and that kind of thing, retaining of water because of the condition of the road. But they had done a big patch job last year. So I understand that it may possibly be in one of the ordinances for tonight. And so I just came down to ask for your support.
And that's the section from Anderson to Sini.
Oh, yes, Mayor. It's Anderson Hill Road to Sini. And yes, correct. Any questions?
No, I'm familiar with the road you're talking about.
Okay.
Actually, the chestnut that goes farther down towards Hardscrabble,
It does.
It's very potholed as well. I cycle on that road, and it's actually got to the point of being dangerous.
Yeah. So
Okay. Thank you.
I won't ask for favorite flavors tonight. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Anyone else from the public on the public session? If not, I will close the public session, and now we will open the public hearing on ordinance 2020-1831, which is an ordinance rezoning lots. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We all know what it is, right? Would you like to be heard on that, Heather?
Sure. I think I've probably spoken to all of you. Heather Epple, 42 Maple Street, and obviously I'm in support of it as I'm one of the people who brought this forward. Essentially the change doesn't really make any major changes to the neighborhood. It just allows some of us homeowners, especially with older non-conforming properties, to have a little bit more flexibility with things we can do with our property and our homes while still keeping conforming to the rest of the neighborhood. That's basically it. So.
Thank you. And the neighborhood's all been notified, they're all aware of this.
Everybody's been notified. I've spoken to a number of them. I think as the planning board, they took some initiative to investigate how many of these properties could potentially be split after this sort of thing, and there wasn't many. And those were the only kind of questions neighbors had when they asked me about it. Seemed to be the worry that somebody was going to come in and knock down old homes and build in a bunch, but there just wasn't. There were only a couple of lots that really could have been, split in that way. So,
all right, thank you. Okay, I will close the public hearing on that. And who would like to move this? I forget where this.
I will.
Okay.
Mayor,
So I'd like to move to ordinance 2020-1831, an ordinance to rezone lots 21 and 22 in block 111 and lots 11 and 11.01 in block 112, lots 13, 14, and 15 in block 113, and lots 101, 15, 1501, and 16 in blocks 114 from R4 to R5, and amending Article 12 entitled Zoning of the Borough Land Development Code.
I'll second.
Be passed on final reading.
I'll be passed. I move to be passed on final reading as adopted as published.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mrs. Merrick?
Yes.
Okay, Tom, would you like to make a motion to introduce this one?
I'm gonna let you or John do this. You guys put these on the agenda, so go ahead.
Oh, because it was finance.
I move
Defer to
that
you guys.
ordinance 2020-1834, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, and published according to law, and that a public hearing scheduled for the meeting at 7:00 p.m. Monday, March 9th, 2020.
Second? Somebody?
I'll second.
Okay, and what this does, we usually put this on the agenda every year. It doesn't mean we will do this. But however, if something comes up that's where we didn't anticipate, a sudden expense, a legal case, whatever, we have the option to use the capped bank, which we haven't, I think we've done ever. Have we ever used it?
Not to my
No, but it just gives us the option should we ever be in a position that we need to. So, we need a voice vote on this.
Yeah. We had a vigorous discussion on this last year and everybody
Right.
was in agreement to it.
I'll listen to understand it better. But I will next week or in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Voice vote, right? So
It's
that's-
just all in
oh,
favor.
all in favor.
Aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay. You wanna move this one?
Nope.
Wasn't this out of the finance committee?
I'll move it. I mean,
Public Works.
I'll move that ordinance 2020-1835, bond ordinance appropriating $1 million and authorizing the issuance of $952,000 bonds or notes of the borough for various improvements or purposes authorized to be undertaken by the borough of Bernardsville in the county of Somerset, New Jersey, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, and published according to law, and that a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting at 7 p.m. Monday, March 9th.
Second?
I'll second.
And this is, Gina, you were in Public Works, right?
Yeah, Christine, myself, and Tom.
Okay, so can we explain what's involved in this particular ordinance? What are we doing with it, with money?
So I think that this one, and Christine, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that this one is the request for additional funding to move up the milling and paving on roads that were not included originally in the budget. So they're asking for an additional $1 million to bond for the roads that we're not
And
we're
this
not able to, but if we continue to let them go, then they will end up costing the
Even
borough
more.
potentially more.
Because of drainage and other issues that come out.
Yeah,
And
the
this
roads will
actually,
just
Chestnut
get-
is included in
Yeah, milling
there.
and paving won't really cut it.
Is there, I'm assuming there's a master road planned in the borough, is that, and is this something that can be provided to all of us as we assess these things?
There's not, but I asked for it.
Okay.
I think that there's always been a list that's rating the quality of the roads and then giving them a score. The score is how, what state of repair they're in,
Yep.
combined with how much traffic they receive. So the score is not just which the worst road. It's also takes into account how much traffic it gets
So
to.
there is a prioritized list.
So
Yeah.
No, I would say that they're scored. There's a score, so you can
Okay.
see where each of the roads score.
I see.
We also factor in like the location of the road, so if it's near something that's gonna be a major project and it's like a
Right, that-
tertiary road, then it'll be included if it's above a certain score, so.
Exactly. So, for example, let's say there's a road that's in dire need and it comes to the top of the list. and there's an adjacent property, adjacent road or piece of a road that it would be financially feasible or wise to do them at the same time while the equipment's in the same area, that other road may not be the highest next item on the list, but it still makes financial sense to do it that way. So that's why there's a list, but it's not the same thing as like, this is the worst road, so we do them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the score for all the different roads.
So is this an additional million on top of the 1.8 for the roads that we still have to take, or is this authorize us to take money out of that 1.8 million?
It's an additional.
This is an additional one.
The concept of putting this on the list now, along with other items that are bond ordinances, is to have the option to include them in the budget and not have to do a second request for bond anticipation notes. Each year, there's a 12-month short-term financing that we do called bond anticipation notes. Those come due in the April timeframe, am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so if we can combine the new monies that we may or may not include in the budget, such as this item here, in the refinancing, we only pay once for the bond counsel to do the work associated with it, and if we go with a larger amount versus a smaller amount in 2 separate issuances, you get potentially a lower interest rate, which we hope we would do. So we're doing this to have the option to include this, but this isn't being approved tonight. This is just putting it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now. We'll have a chance to talk with all the council members. They can come to the finance committee. We're working to finalize the budget, which is going to be in my finance report later in today's agenda. We're working to finalize the budget by Thursday this week, which will finalize the draft budget, which everybody then can look at, sort of where we are, and we can determine as a council, across the board, everybody can determine if this should be included. What this is doing is giving us the option to include it without obligating us to include it at this point.
Have you guys already discussed, and I actually asked Ralph for this in an email today, because obviously this new bond will be an interest rate associated with it as well as a bond payment that's over a certain amount of time.
Yes.
An understanding of what impact that has on the fiscal budget going forward. I know it's a bit of a back napkin, but.
So one of the things that we're going to be reviewing with the Finance Committee on Thursday's meeting this week is the 5-year, it looks 5 years forward and 5 years back of our debt service plan. So we're going to be covering that in the finance group on Thursday. We plan to have it ready for everybody. So between Thursday of this week and March 9th, which is our next council meeting when we would be voting to actually approve this bond issuance, I would encourage all the council members to meet, so we 3 at a time, can't meet more than 3 at a time, with the finance folks from town, and we can go through exactly this, and we can look at it, with and without each of these ordinances. So this is really just putting it on the agenda so that we have the option to do it if on March 9th we as a group agree that we want to do it.
Right. And by then hopefully we'll have the whole Lindaberry dollars back as well to know how much of what was passed last year is going to be spent. So we'll know what's left over.
I think
the bids for Hull and Lindaberry came in, but
No decision was made, right? I think they were due the day after our public works meeting.
yeah.
Today.
But that wouldn't actually impact the 2020 budget, I don't think.
No, because it's from last year.
Yeah, it was 19.
No, but that's part of the 1.8.
Is paying ourselves back.
Yes.
The 900, yes?
No.
The 900 was originally taken from cash unpaid.
Right.
That was $900,000, and that ordinance was done and passed. What you have, it's not this one that you're.
It's the next one.
It's the next one is $916,000, which if in fact that's passed, that would bring us to the
1.8,
which would come out to exactly $10 million.
Right.
That was done.
And Ralph, if you can educate me, is this considered as far as where it would fall within the borough government? Is this a capital project? Is this just a standard DPW project? Because remember the conversation we had about internal resources and making sure that when we're passing things like this, we have the personnel bandwidth to do it. Which portion of the borough government would this come out of?
This type of road work would all be capital projects because they're all bid. And we did receive the bid for Hull and Lindaberry last week. And although Doug, I don't believe has compiled everything to get to the council, but they were under the engineer's estimate, which is a good thing.
Can we talk to Doug at the personnel committee just to make sure that from a labor perspective, we've thought it all through? And we have the resources we need?
So let me just say that this was actually brought to us by Doug Walker. It came through the Public Works. Public Works referred it to the Finance Committee. So we did have those discussions, and because we outsource each of these things. It's not like we need to have the trucks or the personnel available. We just need the project management piece, and that's the person, Doug,
That's Doug.
who would be managing it, and he's the person who brought it to us.
Great.
So.
Okay, so we had a move and a second on introducing it, so then we just, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have to abstain because of the FINRA rules. I can't vote on bonds because
Oh,
of my
right.
work, so
Okay.
I'm an abstain.
Alrighty, next we have, this is the one that's finishing the 1.89, okay? So introduce that.
Sure. So I move that ordinance 2020-1836, bond ordinance appropriating $961,000 and authorizing the issuance of $915,000 bonds or notes for the borough for various improvements or purposes authorized to be undertaken by the borough of Bernardsville in the county of Somerset, New Jersey, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, that a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning 7 p.m. Monday, March 9th, 2020.
A second.
Okay, so this is the one that's finishing the rest of the $10,000,
Yes.
or $10 million
Yes.
referendum that was passed by the
And
public.
I had Leslie check the past ordinances for that, and there were there are 4 ordinances that compiled the $10 million. In 2014, there was an ordinance for $2,470,000. In 15, there was an ordinance for $5,669,000. The 2019 ordinance 1827, which I spoke of earlier, $900,000. And then this ordinance 2020-1836, 961, and it comes out to exactly $10 million.
Okay, and that was, when was that referendum passed?
It was passed at the end of 13.
Okay,
November of 13, and then 14 we went out for that first one, ordinance 14-1666.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. So what's the next one?
1837.
You want to do that?
Yeah, sure. I move that ordinance 2020-1837, bond ordinance appropriating $200,000 and authorizing the issuance of $190,000 bonds or notes of the borough for various improvements or purposes authorized to be undertaken by the borough of Bernardsville in the county of Somerset, New Jersey, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, that a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. Monday, March 9th, 2020.
I'll second.
Okay, Ralph, you want to explain what this is for with capital?
Yes, Mayor. We discussed this at the finance meeting last week, and we made a recommendation, Leslie and I, if we could, since we were in the process of potentially borrowing the millions of dollars that were discussed prior to this, we had $200,000 in the operating budget for capital projects. That was all cash, and we felt that if we could move that $200,000 out and couple it with the borrowing that, anticipating that we're going to borrow the existing money, that would free up $200,000 in the operating budget for to actually begin to add to the capital improvement fund, the cash portion of the budget. We would need $50,000 out of that as a down payment for one of the ordinances, for the $1 million ordinance that was, if in fact that was passed for mill and paving. But the $150,000 could go back into our budget now under in the capital improvement fund, which is cash, and we could begin to build that up. We've had that number as high as $700,000 a few years ago, but we created ordinances and paid cash for it and really brought that down significantly. So I suggested to the committee that we begin to build that back up again, and we saw this as a way to do that.
Right now, it's at $10,000, which is.
Yes, it is.
Like a record low.
Yes, it is. So
What is that exactly? Sorry.
the capital improvement fund is in the
Okay.
current fund. It's an account where it's budgeted. It's cash to do capital projects in cash, or it could be used as a down payment for any borrowing that we might do. And as I said, for years we built high to not to borrow money, to go as pay as you go. So I saw this as an opportunity to get back on that track and begin to build that up in cash, so we're not facing as much borrowing in the future.
Ralph, I just want to make sure I understand. You're not talking about taking a bond to put into a cash account, correct?
No, this is in the current budget, the current operations.
Yeah, I just saw the word bond in there,
It's
so
in the same category as a salary or wage for administration.
you're just moving money around.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. All right, moving on to resolutions. Any that we want to discuss separately before we?
I have 72 and 75.
So I have two questions as well on 79 and 64.
69.
79?
69, sorry.
Which one?
69 and 74.
2064
Oh, wait, 20,
and 2016, it's previous page.
2064.
Yeah, it's actually an ignorant question. It says issuance of a bond of $350.
Release.
Release. So, but that's not taking out of a physical bond, it's just releasing it from a different part of this.
Somebody paid us, and then they didn't,
More like an
They
escrow.
finished
we were
the
holding
work.
it in case they did the work improperly, and then we give it back to them.
Yeah.
I just
More like
wanted
an
to double check.
escrow.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so that one we can leave on.
Yeah,
What
that's
was your
all.
other one?
Let me go back, sorry, I just turned the page.
16, about the sleeve.
69, about the money owed to the Board of Education.
For SLEO, yeah,
How and why do we owe the Board of Education money?
because they overpaid us, yes?
That's correct. This being the first year that we engage in a contract with them for the SLEO services, they pay for the services, and the chief can jump in here anytime he wants.
Okay.
But we want to.
Well, yeah, so we just completed the first year of the program with the SLEO 3s at the school. And when we started that program, we had to come up with an estimated budget as to what our expenses would be, or what we thought they would be. So we made our best case attempt at trying to figure out what the costs associated with that program would be. We wanted to make sure that everything was covered, because worst case scenario, if we fell short, we would end up having to pull people out of the school and cut the program short. So we didn't want to underfund it. We also had a turnover in officers, and for a while we had a position that was not funded. We had a position we didn't have to pay for that wasn't funded. So I believe, a good portion of that probably was related to the fact that we weren't paying out a salary. So going forward, as we continue to monitor this, I think we can keep closer track on what the actual expenses will be to ensure that, the amount of money that we enter into at the beginning of the year will be closer to what we actually spend.
And I believe, Chief, you correct me if I'm wrong, that in the contract there is a true-up clause at the end of the year to do these puts and takes to see if in fact they either underpaid us or overpaid us.
So what was the total budget? Because if we're gonna write a check for 30,000, what percentage of the total budget are we off by?
Question.
I don't have that information tonight, Les.
I don't, it had to be, it had to be over 70,000, I think.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I think the way this worked is we estimated that we would need $110,000 to pay for the SLEOs that actually are employed by us but deployed at the schools.
Yep.
It actually cost $80,000. That was the actual expense. We collected the $110,000 from the schools, and now we're just giving back $30,000 of their money.
I know. Understand.
Yeah. Okay.
I think if you look at
I
the
was reading it
ordinance
the
from
opposite
last
way.
year, it would be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't have the budget document from last year.
So we didn't go over budget by 30%. We
No.
didn't spend the budget.
Yeah. So and just to be clear, the numbers I used, 110 and 80, I just made those up.
Yeah.
As to just
it's something close.
illustrate.
In principle, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We're fine.
Well, the true-up worksheet said 18 and 19 contract amount was 115,000.
Okay. There we go.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then total expended was actually 127 and they paid 157, so it's about,
That makes sense.
yeah. So we just have to refund that. Okay, so can we leave that back on the, just before we move on from that, can we leave that on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'm
You're
fine.
okay?
Yep, I'm good.
All right,
And I had a question on 20-74.
yes. Okay,
Oh, I didn't realize we're moving on. Okay, yeah, the one part that said it would give reports back to the council at large. It was open-ended, didn't say how often that would be, how many,
it would be the same as when we do all the committee reports, like once a month, where you report on public safety and finance, it would be
okay,
just another.
that's fine,
yeah.
I just, that wasn't in there then.
Yeah, it would be on the same,
Monthly then, is that fair
same
to say?
agenda, yeah.
Okay,
We just add it to the list of committees reporting,
as long as we do that, sure.
yeah.
On 2073, I'm assuming council's seen the plan for this bridge and it's appropriate and approvable before my time?
No,
Public Works.
yes.
It's in public.
It's in Public Works and Public Works has seen it and you guys are happy?
The county engineer gave us 3 options, and this was the best option. So yes.
And you agree with that assessment?
Yes.
So this is the best, okay. Just because it talks about 3 options, and I know I haven't seen any options, and everybody's saying we're going with option 1.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And you guys are all happy with option 3?
The engineer's happy with option 3, so.
Engineer,
Yeah.
the
He knows.
facilities manager, everybody.
There are no trolls under the bridge.
Just making sure.
Gina, do you have a, oh, who, no,
No, Christine.
I had,
had
I'm sorry,
72
only
and-
on 72.
not 75, just
No,
72.
sorry.
Okay, and this is for the field treatments.
So I don't agree with the resolution at all. And I've made this known many times, but in any case, it says that we're gonna synthetic treatments in the following places: the Rose Bowl playing field, Claremont playing field, Kiwanis playing fields, Borough Hall, and Polo Grounds and Evancow would be organic plus preventative grub treatment. But it's under synthetic, that Polo Grounds and Evancow, and then it says organic. So I don't know who thought this out, but there's a lot missing here that I think is very, it needs a lot more specifics, like synthetic treatments including, and I would like to see the chemicals that we're talking about. And I also disagree with synthetic treatments altogether unless there's a dire scenario of infestation or something else that can be proven to be dangerous or harmful, considering that a lot of the synthetic chemicals are actually harmful to children. So when this came up last year, we also talked about the law requires a certain amount of notification to the public as far as when the treatment was applied and the signage that has to go up, and none of that is discussed here. So we talked about going above and beyond what the law requires in terms of notifying everyone when a field is treated, if we're gonna ever go that route, which I disagree with doing. So
Okay, well, let's pull that off the consent agenda and we'll do that one separately.
maybe, this wasn't discussed in Public Works, so I don't really know where this came from.
Yeah, because actually, I mean, John, you had sent some pictures and asked
Yeah,
us
because
to
then
talk about
people
this in Public Works.
were
but
complaining about
we
the
didn't.
condition of, I guess, Evancow especially. Because it was
So it
dead
says
patches and
here,
crabgrass.
Evancow
Well, Evancow is
organic.
just organic treatments plus the preventive grub treatments. I guess the grubs were the primary culprit last year. So I don't think, my interpretation was the organic treatments would remain, but what they would add in is the synthetic grub treatment or the preventive grub treatment to keep the fields from returning to the condition they finished in last year.
Yeah, I just think this is way too vague. For me to vote yes to this, it would never happen, the way it's
Okay.
written.
So let's do 2061 to 2075 and without 72, and we'll do that one separately. Somebody want to move those?
I'll move
Sorry,
What,
can I
Jim?
just ask about 75, because I was trying to read through this
Oh.
again, and what exactly is this for? It's just additional
This is-
topology money?
This is to write the actual redevelopment plan for 65 Morristown Road, which is the Audi dealership. which was designated as an area in need of redevelopment. So this is to write the actual plan, because we can't do anything without the plan first being written. That's a requirement.
Okay,
So this is the next step in the process.
okay.
Well, and it's also there's $5,000 for them to support the committee, so to give reports to the committee and update them and whatever assistance the committee needs in gathering information. So it's two
Both
separate
of those
contracts.
things. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you moved?
I moved.
So it's 61 to 75 without 72. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Ms. Amer,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond.
Yes.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Okay, so now 2072. Somebody want to move in second and then we'll discuss it?
I'll move 2072.
I'll second.
Okay, it's open for discussion. Or not.
Well, you know what Christine stands. Well, my feeling is the fields just didn't hold up very well last year in the pure organic treatments, and I think this is sort of brings them back to better form. You know, just for playability, for safety, just to keep them from deteriorating further.
I mean, the only change from last year's edition of the grub piece, right?
For Evan
Well,
Cow. And
For Evan Cow and the Polo Grounds, yeah. The rest of that is all organic. And then, but then we went back to the inside playing areas.
Oh, that would happen last year though, right? I think.
We
No?
stopped
so
treating
it
those
was all
last
organic
year.
last year. I
So
don't think it
when
feels
you synthetically treat the soil, you actually make it worse for healthy soil. And we went through the entire process of testing the soil and determining that it actually hasn't been completely destroyed at this point to a point where, you'll never be able to bring it back to what it's supposed to be, like what a healthy soil is supposed to be. So if it comes that we have to do spot treatments, then I really think that it should be a one-off and not just a blanket. We're gonna do synthetic treatments on any of these fields, because you're gonna make the health of the soil worse, and the health effects that it has on children are not something that you're gonna see immediately. These are things that you're gonna see down the road a lot with endocrine disorders, and it's science. It's not like I'm making this up. This is scientific fact.
To me, it's a bit of a reach. I mean, I think these things have been approved, and they're used as approved. I mean, the sun's a carcinogen, by anyone's definition.
Yeah, I
So
remember you saying that. So anyway, I think that I would like to have some time to write a resolution that is actually more, more specific. What synthetic treatments are we talking about? Are we talking about ones that we get sheets? I don't know if you know this,
Yes,
but every
MSD
single
has
pesticide that our contractor applies, they have to give us a sheet, and on the sheet it tells you if it's a possible carcinogen, and the stuff that we were applying was a possible carcinogen. I don't want to take that chance. I don't think it's worth it, because down the road a lot of these synthetic pesticides are going to be banned, and then what are we going to
Well,
do?
then we'll follow the rules, but I think that
And then
it
it'll
creates
cost us more, because
it'll-
our soil will be completely
I
destroyed.
think it
by
just
that
creates a
point.
more durable, playable surface. We don't have a lot of fields, and we just kind of have them as robust as possible for the
Well,
maximum
we have
usage.
a brand new free turf now that everyone
Okay.
can use, so why do we have to destroy everything else?
Anybody else want to?
Good.
We had multiple meetings last year
Yes.
discussing this. And one of the things that came up was that we had missed the deadline to do the grub control. So if we wanted to prolong this to discuss it, as you suggest, when do we have to make our decision by? What's our drop dead date for the public works people to
I think it's
apply
March
whatever needs to be
something.
I
applied?
think March is growth treatment, isn't it?
Is Doug here?
No,
So the question
Yes,
is
I
if
believe
we
that's
put this
correct.
off to write a more
I believe that's correct.
detailed, as you want, a resolution, are we gonna miss our deadline?
I don't think it was as bad as people made it out to be.
Tom, you wanted to say something?
That's not the question though.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Ralph, would we miss, do you know if we'd missed the deadline?
I
it's
believe
March.
if you decide by the March 9th meeting, we would still be okay.
I mean, I don't see the point of dragging this out. We're not adding glyphosate to the application plan here. This
I
is,
think you are.
No, we're not.
Synthetic treatments, that's what it is.
Not in the quantities that are relevant.
So,
I move that we just
Says you.
get this done.
well, I would like to ask a few questions, because I think that Councilwoman Zamora did bring up a couple points that I think haven't really been addressed, which is, what process do we follow? A lot of times when we've brought stuff before the council here, it's been, we should go through the committee first, the committee makes a recommendation, the recommendation from the committee comes back to the council. It seems like we're short-circuiting the process here. That's number one. Number two, I'm aware of what Jeff Hammond is saying, which is, what's the timing, and we don't want to actually, limit ourselves to what our options are by doing things out of sync or not in sufficient timing. I think the resolution is not specific enough. It doesn't talk about what synthetics, how frequently synthetics go on. It doesn't talk about notifications, which was agreed by the council last time, that if we went back to synthetics, we would provide notifications for the public. We haven't talked about that. It's pretty vague from that perspective. And I heard Councilman Donahue say that they're applied as approved, but I think we found through our discussions last year that some of the applications were not actually done by our staff, but done by the leagues themselves. And I don't think we have any control over whether or not they're being used as approved when that's the scenario. So those types of things, I think, are things worth considering. And if we have the timing to do it, and I don't know that we do, but if we have the timing to do it, I think those are legitimate questions that were brought forward. And I certainly would be more comfortable with the resolution that's more specific on some of the points that Councilwoman Zamora mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, we were just supposed to bring this up in Public Works, and I don't know, it just didn't, because John specifically asked for it to be brought up in Public Works.
Yeah, I don't know.
We talked about keeping things the same way, but this doesn't look like it's the same way.
So would we be able to, before the March 9th meeting, are you gonna be able to put together 1 or 2 emergency meetings in order to come back with a detailed proposal?
Well, I mean, last year we talked about an integrated pest management resolution, and Jack did bring us a couple of drafts. One was Bernards Township, what they use, so I think we could include that verbiage again and vote on it if you want to.
I'm not in favor of going
That was a
into
little different.
into a more expensive.
That was more expensive. That was
That's
totally
not the
organic.
same as
That was
organic. I'm sorry, but integrated pest management is not totally organic. It's
Wasn't it?
not. No,
Full organic was like $65,000, I think.
that's a different scenario.
But I mean, I think what we're adding, what this would give us at least the flexibility to be sure we have the preventive growth treatment done. And, conceptually, we could it could revisit it, but, I don't see much of a change here, because it's, other than doing the inside of the baseball fields, Evan Cow will be hopefully saved, and, it goes back to our organic treatments, other than the preventative growth stuff.
Jack, if this has been moved and seconded, do we need to vote on it?
Yes, unless somebody moves to.
So, is the discussion over? Because I have another point then.
Okay,
The discussion's
no,
over.
go ahead.
I just know if anybody else wants to.
I don't really have anything else to say.
Okay. So, I wasn't clear on whether or not definitively we can wait to March 9th or not definitively wait to March 9th. Because if we think we can wait, that, to me, this still opens the door to maybe we shouldn't wait.
Excuse me, I cannot firmly confirm that, but I believe, that early March was the time frame.
I asked Doug the same question. He said March, because I guess the way the cycle of these things goes, it has to be.
Right.
He was hopeful we could be addressed this month, so it can begin in March.
Well, at the very least, I would like to know what specifically we're talking about.
Well, I mean, I think it's reasonable and rational that if we were to pass it tonight, it should be passed pending that the process for notification is made, and the synthetics to be used will be specified, and that the quantities to be used, the frequencies are part of this, to be added to this resolution.
I think that's
because I mean, to leave it the way it is, you could put an unlimited amount of synthetics an unlimited number of times on the fields the way it's written. I understand that's not the intention, but then we should be specific about it,
Well, it's more than that. I mean, in this case, I do agree with Christine. I think there are some synthetics that are worse than others, and we should have, as a council, be able to say no to certain ones.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here? Do you want to vote on this?
Well, we have to vote on it.
Right, it's been moved and
I think that,
With the caveat.
But with the caveat that we are notified It follows the proper notification, and we have the MSDN sheets for each
No, that's
chemical.
not enough, because that's after the fact, you know, it may, I think the council has to decide if they agree with the plan. We don't know what the plan is. You know, I mean,
But don't you trust Doug? I mean, essentially this
The
is Doug's
professionals
department,
to
right? I
do
mean,
their- yeah.
Doug is gonna, I have no idea what he's gonna do either. But I trust that Doug is going to make good decisions.
you know, I do too, but, we have had situations even within this borough where things happened that we trusted people and things didn't work out. So I didn't get elected to trust people, I got elected to make decisions. And I think we're responsible for this.
Do we have, are these teams, or these are independent organizations, not the borough organization that use some of these fields? That was made clear last meeting, right? These are independent organizations.
Well, no, like the polo grounds in Evancow, the schools use those.
And
More
in
than
addition,
anyone.
I don't know if anyone's aware of this, but the school has a policy that students are not allowed to play on fields that are treated with synthetic or treated synthetic. They have to follow integrative pest management on school-owned fields. And our situation is a little bit unique because the school doesn't own those fields, but they use them. So I think we're kind of walking a fine line
No,
here.
but then you're right, it's integrated pest management does not mean not synthetic.
Right.
It means you have to have a plan,
So
I mean,
that
you're
should be-
required by law to
yeah.
have an integrated pest management plan.
Exactly.
But it can include synthetics.
Right, but this resolution doesn't say anything like that.
I think what this is going back to what we used to do.
It was, because I
Right.
think it was a service contract that maybe runs this year, I could be misremembering. But it's just kind of reverting to what it was.
So I understand that that's your intention, but that's not what it says, you know.
You know,
It's just.
I don't wanna
there's
drag this
no
out
meat in
any
here
more than
at all.
anybody else does too, but I think we do have a window of opportunity. March 9th is not that far into March that we can't
It's actually the 10th,
get this.
isn't it? 10th, is that right?
No, neither.
So, you know, I think, you know, we're gonna have to vote on this as it's written, which means you either vote yes or no. If we,
Well, no, we can add addendums to it, right?
Yes.
Is it?
yeah, but we don't,
Caveats
we're not
are
gonna have the
good.
details. The details we need, we can add all the addendas, but it doesn't say what the plan is. So if you want the plan, then you're gonna have to vote no, and they come back with it. If you're okay with what it is, you vote yes.
Well, whoever moved the resolution can withdraw their motion
Who moved it?
if they wish.
I think, did I move it? I think I moved it.
You did.
I did, no, I'm happy with it. I mean, I think we're just reverting what we did.
That's not what it says.
Well, yeah, we're doing synthetic on the inside of those baseball fields. We're doing pre-grub on Evancow and doing organic. I mean, I don't see.
No, but I'm saying it doesn't say what we did before. It doesn't say how to four treatments a year. It doesn't say with these
I'm not gonna
products.
belabor this and detail it to death. I mean, I trust that we have a contract, they know what they're doing, and, and we'll ask Doug to verify that he's comfortable with it all.
Come on, John, details is what we do.
Yeah,
But we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to micromanage our staff.
We're not micromanaging, but we're approving certain things that deal with the health and safety of the community.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's about, but that's what,
Do we have,
Doug is
are
supposed
we
to be
at any
doing.
kind of risk if these independent organizations that use our fields come back to us and say, well, you did this and we don't like it in a year from now, or 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Are we liable?
In what way?
Well, an independent organization comes and uses our field. It's not a borough it's not, it's one of the leagues. And then one of the parents of one of the members feels that something happened to their child, and they come after us as a result of it. I'm just asking,
I mean, that.
who's liable? Is it us?
Well, my guess is that would they sign
It would be
a waiver
the
if they use
chemical
our fields,
company.
and they would have the chemical forms available to them, so they would know what the.
Right, did they sign off on it?
I don't know. I mean, I would imagine it's the same thing whether they're using the turf field, whether they're using, drinking out of the water fountain. But I mean, there's a lot of things that we could potentially be liable for.
Yeah. Under the Tort Claims Act, we're probably not liable. That doesn't mean we will get sued. If we do, turn it over to the jail.
Thank you.
I mean, for me, this is not a huge personal issue, so I'm fine with the way it is.
okay, so should we have a roll call?
I need to understand, are we voting for it as written, or are we voting for it with modifications?
Well, what were the modifications? You had some good ones. What were they?
That requires the detailing of which products will be used, the frequency of their use, and what notifications will be provided to, the participants? Like, is it a sign? Is it posted? Is it posted for a week in advance and a week afterwards? Like, what is the process for these notifications? And then I think the use is approved. We need to also notify the participants that they can't self-administer products on the field.
Well, I don't think, were they doing that, or is that just hearsay?
Even if it was hearsay, we should, as part of our notification process, notify the users that they are not allowed to put any of their own products on the field, that we manage the process, right? That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So as part of the notification, we're notifying the teams that use the fields, they aren't allowed to independently apply their own products.
So I think if we want to do this right, we just need to adopt our own integrated pest management policy. And I know that it sounds like something off the rails, but Bernards Township passed theirs in 2008, and we're right next door to them. So and I'll just read from an article from 2008 that talks about it. The integrated pest management policy for the township identifies key sensitive areas to be managed without harmful chemical pesticides. Integrated pest management calls for the management of insects, undesired plants, grubs, and plant diseases with methods that are least likely to impact human health or the environment. It goes on. What I'm saying is that's the type of things I want in this resolution. And this is 4 sentences of meaningless, to me, nothing.
Well, it does. It says the common areas are gonna be all organic. I mean, that's, that's pretty, it doesn't be more
That could
complicated
be
than that.
geese poop. I mean, we don't really know what we're talking about here. It has to be more detailed than that. An integrative pest management policy is what a town is supposed to adopt, not this resolution.
I think we have it. Do we have an integrated pest
No,
management?
I wanted one last
Well,
year,
we
but
don't,
everybody
okay.
said no, so no, we don't.
I think we didn't do it last year because the window to do it actually had closed.
But I think to Christine's point, we did, I think, say in parallel that we were going to investigate what an integrated pest management plan would look like, and it doesn't feel like we did that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like we came up with an integrated pest management plan that we as a council could consider, and so we were left with this relatively vague resolution.
Yeah. I think moving that forward isn't a bad idea for the future.
So we'll.
But in the meantime.
But in the meantime,
You wanna
spring
get
is here.
Yeah, and we have had 2 public works committees where this didn't come up. That's my only things, because I've attended both of them,
Yeah.
and I would have loved to have talked about
You
this.
can bring it up there.
Well, this should have been talked about in September.
Yeah.
October.
I
mean,
and we were supposed to, and
So-
I totally
so,
forgot the next day. I was
Tom, what
like,
I'd like
You
to
can bring up anything,
propose,
it doesn't have to be on the agenda.
with the changes that you made, that we, and I'm gonna paraphrase based on memory, so if I miss, a list of what and how often, notification of the public, I think was a big piece of yours, right?
Yeah.
I think is appropriate.
And notifying the users.
And notifying the users, I think is reasonable with, if you guys can go to DPW and create a plan that, so that, look, from my perspective, we have a lot more problems to be talking about than this multiple times every year, so let's create a long-term solution.
Asthma, cancer, developmental and learning disabilities, nerve and immune system damage, liver or kidney damage, reproductive impairment, birth defects, and disruption of the endocrine system. Infants, children, pregnant women, elderly people with compromised immune system and chemical sensitivities are especially vulnerable to pesticide effects and exposures. This is what an integrated pest management policy delineates, and that we know about this, and we are going to make an effort to not put that on our fields. That's what I'm talking
We'll
about.
medically disagree on
So
the
under the details,
so
I think what we
this
should
is
have
not
is.
important to you,
is
but
a-
it is-
No, I'm saying
Right,
medically, I would disagree with you,
But
that
for,
you're overstating the risk.
yeah, for details, we should have whichever are the safest products available for now. If we put that in there under where you're asking for details and including the safest products currently available.
There's an integrated pest management policy that Sustainable Jersey recommends, and it's 1 page. You can take out as many whereases as you want to make it suitable to you, but this is not what what you put before us is not what a resolution looks like. I'm sorry. You know it as well as I know it.
You meaning
I think
who?
that's a fair
Doesn't
assessment.
this come
This
from
resolution
somebody?
is
I don't know where
not
this-
sufficient, the way it's written now.
So who put the resolution together?
Is glyphosate used? I mean, I've heard two things. I've heard it's not used and I've heard it's used in small amounts.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, so that's key, because I would draw the line on that product.
Where did it come from?
Doug.
Oh, Doug
He
put
gave me
this
the
in?
minimum
Okay.
part of that, and then I pasted
And I
that.
think Doug is doing what he's trying to do his best in terms of people telling him about, you know, how bad the fields are. I get it. I mean, I understand, but I just don't wanna rush to put something on there that's really not necessary.
And it's not that I don't trust Doug, by the way. I don't know what direction, to your point, Christine, I think it's a good one. We don't know what direction he's been given. So, you know, again, we don't know what the plan is.
Well, he
So
was
we
the
should
one that
refer
brought
it
to us
then-
that how bad the fields were, and that we lost Evan Cow because of the grubs. That was him telling us that. So he's, you know, it wasn't people telling him the fields are in bad shape. He knows
No,
that.
no, not that. I mean, telling him what's
going
permissible,
forward.
what's not permissible, what we need to do, how urgently we need to do it. No one's disputing that the fields were in trouble.
So what I would suggest is you guys can vote on this, and if the next meeting, I will ask to put on the agenda an IPM resolution for you to consider.
Okay.
Is that it again? Next meeting, you're gonna.
Integrated pest management should be on our next agenda, and I
Right.
heard agreement for that
Yeah.
proposal.
And
So would
what
that
will-
override this then?
No, well,
It will complement it, I think. In other words, we're saying synthetic, but the IPM will say what is considered synthetic, what's acceptable synthetic. So if we say this is what we wanna do, the IPM will tell us set the parameters, yes?
Yes.
That's assuming it gets passed. I mean, it was more expensive, was it not, if I remember?
No, organic was more
I think you're
expensive,
getting
but-
confused, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought IPM was as well.
No, IPM is not organic.
No, but
I
thought
can
it was
send
more
you
expensive.
Plan.
the emails again if you wanna.
It's just
reread
really
them.
setting up the parameters in which you use products and how you
And will this be
notify people.
created by the DPW committee? Is that the way that we're gonna go
Public
about this? 'Cause
Works.
I think to Tom's point, there's a process. So the Public Works should probably discuss it, review it, and build it,
The policy.
the policy, and then that should be discussed.
Yeah, I mean, does it have to be a resolution, or can Public Works just come up with a policy that they follow?
if
I
we have an
think it should
integrated
be a
pest management plan, we have to
resolution.
go vote on it, right? For an integrated
It
pest
should,
management plan?
and, I mean, you vote on policies, you vote on resolutions, you vote on ordinances, you know, and those are incrementally more substantial than the next, right? So, I would love an ordinance that says we use IPM from
What's a
now on
resolution,
forever and
right?
ever.
A resolution to do an IPM?
And I just sent, Jack and, you, Mayor, the copy for next meeting to consider. It's just the draft resolution. As I said before, Sustainable Jersey puts out a draft that towns can use as guidelines in order to create a policy that suits their needs. We're a smaller town than Bernards Township.
That's
We're
right. If
this,
gonna-
we don't have as much
If we're gonna consider that
money.
at the next meeting and approve it, let's assume for a moment it gets approved, then why not just wait and redo all this at the next meeting? Because Doug's not gonna start acting upon this resolution, I would think, unless, if he knows that something that may alter what he purchases and what he does is coming down the pike.
I mean, I don't know.
What's the sense of passing this now, saying that we're gonna amend it with a integrated pest
We don't wanna
management?
lose the window for
I don't-
We're gonna
decrubbing.
lose it anyhow.
Yeah, but
don't
I
think it's
don't
gonna
think an
happen that
integrated pest
quickly.
management plan actually amends it.
And this
I
is
think
more
it just
2021.
makes it more specific.
Yeah,
Right.
it
Then why
does.
not
It
just
doesn't
make it
amend it.
specific? I don't understand.
Because
I'm
we
not
may
sure that
not,
it's gonna
it
be
may
done.
take us a while to get the plan written and approved and.
I mean, when is
the way we want
DPW
it.
meeting next?
I don't know, Christine says that it's already written.
PW meeting.
I'm
But that doesn't
looking
mean
for
we're
that.
gonna like it
Yeah,
the way
it
it's
may,
written.
it may not be before March 9th. I'm trying to look now.
I don't think it's gonna be.
I mean,
You have it
I
on the
personally would
calendar.
like this considered within the committee that it's currently in. I mean, there's
So
experts there that can help.
I'm
to-
all for following the committee process, but I don't like that we didn't follow the committee process here, but we're gonna follow the committee process for something
Well,
else.
they
So we
tried.
should just be
The 17th.
equitable. I heard that people were in the meeting, they could bring it up anytime. So, look, I'm happy to follow the process. I'm happy to do that. But if we're gonna follow the process on one thing, we should follow the process on everything.
And there's
That's
nothing
all
that
I'm
says that
saying.
the committee, there's nothing that says that the committee can't have an extra meeting scheduled.
Yeah, the
Well-
17th is is our next PW meeting.
So you can do it before
Actually,
then,
I
though.
think I have March 5th here. Public Works meeting, March 5th, it says.
How much of a time how far in advance?
Oh, that's
You have to announce
2019.
public
That was
meetings.
last year.
Or this is not a public
No,
meeting.
no, I don't have
That was last year.
This is not an advisory
Sorry.
committee. So you could hold a meeting tomorrow for all.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I agree with adding all of the additional stuff, getting more specific and doing that. But we can,
Doing what?
moving forward with the, kind of
Amended.
being more specific.
Oh, and then have
on
the
amendments.
IPM, which will then.
We can look at the
It
IPM
3
and
to
see
4
what-
months before something substantial is written. We can't miss another season. I agree that we need to move that direction, but I'm not willing to be here in June and have our fields the way they were last year because we didn't act.
I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you get one grub treatment in before we change it.
I mean, right now in this, look, I'm not speaking as an authority in grass because I'm not, but I know that right now is the time when they do a lot of stuff to these fields to make them look and perform the way they need to. And if we're gonna have a long debate on what a long-acting plan should be for this community, it's gonna take us some time.
Okay, let's do the vote on the way the resolution is with adding the details, frequency, notifications for.
Types of material.
That's the details, which
Sorry,
are
yeah,
the
go ahead.
materials, the frequency, notifications to public as well as user groups. Okay? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
No,
Ms. McCready?
Yes,
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
I object to the process that this was, the way this was presented, so I'm gonna vote no.
Mrs. Mayor?
No.
Mayor?
Yes. And then next month, we will have a draft IPM
Yes.
so that we can get the details ironed out for how this should look. But at least, you know, if we get that first grub treatment, it'll be a start.
Can we get a commitment to follow the process for all the things that come forward, not just some of the things that come forward?
I agree with that.
Okay,
I agree.
I think that's what we should do.
And I think looking forward, plans for most things that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that means that Doug, if he wanted to put this as a resolution, he should have brought it up in the PW meeting along with everything else that was brought up.
Sure. Absolutely. And anybody who attends the meeting is free to bring it up
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well, so.
Yeah, and I think
just-
in his
Yeah.
defense, I mean, we talk about so much in that.
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, it's
No,
a
I
very,
know,
it's a
that's why I
long
said I
meeting, it's
forgot
a
to
long
bring it up, I
agenda,
mean-
usually it's a multi-paged agenda.
Yeah.
And
John
the
sent us the
roads-
pictures and I saw them the next day and I just forgot to.
The
bring it up.
roads pretty much dominated what we talked about.
Okay, reports, public safety.
At our last meeting, we discussed a number of factors. One was efforts ongoing in terms of speeding mitigation. The chief has been responsive to some of the concerns that we've relayed to him, and there's been increase in patrols and surveillance in the key spots. One thing that did come out of our discussion was the success of the electronic speed signs, and now that we're in the budget cycle, we've asked for one additional sign. We felt it would be, he felt it would be worthwhile to have one placed on Mine Brook Road. So that's been relayed to the finance committee. There was a discussion of the CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team. Right now, we have approximately 14 to 15 citizens, non-school board personnel. We really need to have a critical mass of 20 to 25 active volunteers, and those are, don't count the shelter volunteers. So there's gonna be a push to increase awareness of the CERT team and move to get more volunteers. There was a discussion about the potential for shared services, particularly with PPAC Gladstone, but the mayor had already reached out to them and they gave us a cold shoulder, which is not surprising because they did the same with Bedminster. But we thought that we could have helped them out since they don't have a chief, and they We could have put a satellite station there, but apparently that's a dead end at the moment. As an announcement, there's a neighborhood watch program meeting Wednesday, March 4th at 7 p.m. And there'll be flyers out about that. And then lastly, there was a discussion, and I'll just be brief about this because it's going to come up in Councilwoman Zamara's report about Public Works, about Berners Avenue. So we both committees have passed this through that there would be a need not just for sidewalks on Berners Avenue, but the surrounding areas, which would enhance the walking into the downtown, and also would revitalize that section of town, so that we don't just concentrate on Quibby Avenue, and that would include lighting, but I'll let Public Works discuss that in more detail. But it also has the endorsement of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you.
So let me just, Ralph, can you include the electronic speed sign request? Make sure that when we talk about the finalization of the budget, whether just have that request in on Thursday's meeting so we can discuss if we can afford that.
Yes, I'm already ready.
Thank you.
Finance Committee.
So Finance Committee, I touched on this earlier. We're going to have our Finance Committee meeting Thursday this week. This particular version of the draft budget we feel is basically close to final. So I would propose that we finalize it on Thursday among the Finance Committee team, and that we invite all the other council members then to review the finalized draft after that time and before the March 9th meeting. That's most important to the 3 bond ordinances that have been introduced. But I think I also further want to talk about what Dr. Hammond said went through the Public Safety Committee, what came through Public Works, and what was reviewed at Finance Committee, which is the Berners Avenue project. And we'll talk about that more when it comes up in Public Works. But basically, we're at the stage of finalizing the budget this week, and then reviewing it, independently. Everybody reviewing it with the finance team, meeting the staff between now and after the 27th of February, but before our next meeting on March 9th.
So Tom, are we reviewing that with you or with Ralph?
So it will be with Ralph and with Leslie, although if there's only 2 of you going to the meeting, let me know, and I'd be happy to sit in on that if that's helpful. But I was staying back so that they can meet with 3 of you at a time if that's more convenient. So whatever works for people's schedules. But if there's only 2 of you going to a particular meeting, let me know, and if I'm available, then I'll try and support that as well.
Okay.
Very much.
Or the mayor's welcome to attend if she would, if she's available and I'm not.
I'd like your
whomever.
thoughts on a lot of things. So even if you're not there, I may follow up with.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I definitely would want to attend. I don't know if any other council, I know Chad, I'm sure you would. Any other council members that would want to be included in that?
Yep, finance.
Jeff, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's only 3 at a time, right?
So up to 3 at a time
Yeah,
could go.
so you would do 2 and 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, personnel?
We didn't have a meeting.
Okay. Public Works?
Public Works, we talked about Washington Corner Road. There's a big concern about the current condition of the road because milling and paving only might be it might not work because of the stability of the existing surface. So we discussed some options that are relatively new in the field of road paving, and that's reclamation or hot in place, and we're supposed to hear more about that next time we meet. So basically there's a contractor who has a sustainable way of reusing the pavement to rebuild roads, and it's supposed to be less expensive and better for the environment. So the engineer was meeting with someone and was going to report back to us on whether that's feasible for us, and if it is, it could be a very good thing for us. The bridge that we voted on earlier is the Washington Corner Road County Bridge. So the county provided 3 options, and we supported option 3. Our engineer, our committee, we all supported option 3, and all the work is going to be performed by the county under their direction and expense, so it's nothing on us. For Bernards Avenue, we briefly mentioned about beginning the process. In other words, 75,000 would be for engineering the road to be kind of part of the things that were recommended to us by the walkability study, by the grant that we did, and that was making it walkable from the park down towards Bernards Avenue. Then when you get to Bernards, up towards the chapel, that area just needs to be engineered so that it's more walkable for the residents and for people.
Wasn't it through West and Prospect?
Yep, so the area near Bernards, Lower Bernards as it's being called, Lower Bernards, I guess there's a drainage issue there that the engineer talked to us about because it's so flat and the water sits there, and that's an issue, an ongoing issue that we've known about and definitely needs attention because the road, you know, obviously you don't want water sitting on the road. So the request was just for 2020 was to have the money in the budget for the engineering of that, and the cost of the project itself, which it would include Lower Bernards from West Street to Kiwanis, Mine Avenue, Grove Street, Lower Maple Street, Lower Garibaldi, and West Street. Keep in mind, none of these streets have been really anything but patchwork for many, many years. So the estimate project costs is right now, and again, this is without the actual engineering, but it's 1.2 to 1.4, and that's based on engineering that was done a long time ago that was never,
Project wasn't really moved
Right.
forward.
So in any case, we moved a couple of bond ordinances earlier to even consider other roads, and I think Doug's, when we talked about it, we had included Bernards Avenue as one of those, so I'm not sure if we can add an ordinance on for this one. And in other words, like, if we're gonna consider those other two, then we should probably consider this too when we're making our decision.
But these were referred to the finance committee for that reason, so how did the one?
So what happened was that both these came to the finance committee, so they went from public safety, they went to the committee process there, they went to the committee process in public works, they referred to finance committee. The finance committee meeting, we talked about two different options. One was to do two different bond anticipation notes in the year. The idea that we were going to do two would give us the opportunity to spend more time talking about this option and other options, and then still have time to get all the paperwork in and time to both include it in the ultimate budget, but have it for this secondary bond issuance. The finance folks in the borough came back on Thursday after the finance committee meeting and said, you know, if we do this through resolution tonight, through ordinance tonight, ordinance introduction tonight, then we can actually bundle all the bonds at once, which saves us about $8,000 in bond counsel fees, and then ultimately might provide us with a lower total interest rate, because if all of the debt is issued at the same time, it's more attractive to potential bondholders, and they sometimes bid a lower interest rate. So for those reasons, that decision was made after the finance committee meeting. And so three things got onto the agenda. This one got left off, and I understand that this may not be something that we want to move forward with, but having it on the agenda tonight as an introduction gives us the option to either do it or not do it after meeting with finance, looking at the finalized budget, seeing what the impact would be, and each of us could make a decision prior to March 9th, and then it could be not passed on March 9th. But not having it introduced tonight eliminates that option completely. And so rather than do that in a group of two people on one night or one day, I felt that it would be useful to have 7 council members, 6 council members plus the mayor, be able to evaluate this and determine whether or not it should go forward as part of this year's budget or not. So that's why I would also support Christine's suggestion that we introduce it by title tonight. That doesn't commit us to do it, but it gives us the option, and as we all look at the finalized budget this week, we can determine whether or not there's room for all 4 of these things that have been introduced tonight, 2 of the things that have been introduced tonight, 1 of the things, 0 things that are introduced tonight, you know, and that basically, again, treats everything on equal footing, and, you know,
Yeah,
we
so
all have all the data before we make a decision about which one makes sense or which more than one makes
I
sense.
think we need to address the road situation. The thing that I just don't have knowledge of yet, because we talked multiple times about the debt service that the borough currently has, what additional debt service will do to budgets going downfield, especially since we're in several negotiations for different things that may increase the bottom line costs that we already have. So that's my
Right, so that's the information that would be available as we finalize the budget, and on Thursday, we're reviewing the 5-year debt service plan. That would be available for everybody else to view as well, and that's what I'm saying, with all the information, we can make an informed decision about whether 0 of the things introduced tonight can be afforded, whether 2 could be afforded, whether 3 or 4 could be afforded. But this is like preemptively taking one of the 4 potential projects off the list without actually having all the data to evaluate it.
I think what we're looking, no, I was just gonna say, what we're looking to do is introduce this ordinance. You know, in order, like, to add it on later, we would have paid the bond council to write it again, but we can still introduce it and then vote on it in March with all of them.
March 9th.
Right,
And
say
since we're talking about
this
them
one or that
individually, we
one.
can
Wait,
vote
let
this
me
one,
finish.
sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
So that if we have them all on for March 6th, at that point, we can, 9th, we will have looked at the budget, looked at the debt service and said, okay, we think we can do these 2 and not this one, we can do them all, we can do none of them.
Right.
Whatever, but we can introduce this by title tonight if you want to have it to vote on March
When was
9th.
when was the engineering done on this? Christine, did you say?
It was
No, sorry.
What is the scope of the project?
The request from Doug that went to Public Works Committee was to determine if the council is interested in this project before we commit to the engineering of the project.
So what is the scope of the project?
5 years ago, there was a project that was similar in scope that was at least preliminarily engineered, but then the council at the time, however many years ago, did not pursue the project.
And I think that,
It was not pursued because the people that live there couldn't come up with, they couldn't get a consensus on whether or not to put a sidewalk.
and it was
so fell
only
apart.
Bernards Avenue straight up and
Right.
down.
Right.
This
But-
is, the scope for this is Lower Bernards from West Street to Kiwanis. Mine Avenue, Grove Street, Lower Maple Street, Lower Garibaldi, and West Street. Survey and design. That's what the scope
Well, I
is.
think also what's scared of.
To be clear though, what it is.
It's
Wait, let Jeff
Go
say
ahead.
something.
The price scared people off because one of the things was, you know, we're gonna have to start moving utility poles and things like that, but in looking at the plans with John McDowell, there were options that were not considered. There were other things that could be done that would have made it less problematic. So I think it's worth a relook.
Well, I think the issue with the sidewalks is that some of those houses don't have driveways and they couldn't currently park on the side onto the lawn.
There would be a loss of, some
And
parking
then
there.
there's no place. for these
particularly
people
from the
to
stop
park.
sign towards, you guys drove it, when you come home and work, I mean, there's a lot of people park on the street there, so I think, you know, that area needs TLC for sure, because I'm down there all the time.
But I think you know, those are problems, logistic problems that if we put our heads together and we use our support staff, we can solve those problems.
And those are problems
It would definitely revitalize an area that's been neglected. I think mine hasn't, if memory serves me, they told me that street hasn't had anything done to it in 17 years.
Oh, wow.
Correct.
Yes,
And I think yes. So we talk about this as the Bernards Avenue project, but it's really more comprehensive, and I think
It's
that
like a very big chunk of that village, and it happened when we did the walkability study, and I can send you guys copies from last year of it. It was the path most taken, not only by the people who live there, but the students who are walking to school down there. So they're taking a path from Bernards up, then making a left on, you know, the one street before they have to go up the big Bernards Hill. It's just that you can see, I mean, there's areas of people's front grass where you can see people are going on the grass of someone's lawn because they are in the street, and
Plus, if we're clever, we tie this into the Quimby revitalization because we're doing the bridge over the train tracks. That's a connecting to that area, you know, just.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mentioned in Public Works. I hadn't heard about this obviously until then, when it came up in Public Works, and that's what I said, because if we expanded the area for redevelopment, which includes that area over the tracks that you're just referring to, Jeff, I said, we need to make sure that these two things connect one another. So what I didn't want to do was go and spend $75,000 to go revisit the walkability study that was done X amount of years ago, when now we have the redevelopment as well, and now we need to connect these two things rather than keeping them as separate entities.
Well, the
And so from the
Yeah, $75,000 not
and
for a
also-
walkability study, just so you
No,
know.
it was the engineering for,
This,
based on the
results,
walkability
right.
study,
which
right,
was
based on
last year,
the.
no,
not years ago.
the engineering that was done was 5 years ago. The walkability study was last year, so
Okay,
those two things.
good, thank you, but
they're
either
not-
way, yes,
But
thank you, but either way, I think they need to connect from a timing perspective, because even then, the Quimby Lane was only Quimby Lane, redevelopment was only Quimby Lane, now it includes this
Train
other
station
area. And I think the other thing that I personally had a concern about was the residents. Because if and Bob said it in the meeting, that the residents could not come to an agreement the last time that they had talked about this, which is kind of what stalled it. So I would very much be in favor of making sure that the residents are included in any recommendation that
That's a
we
good
have.
process. I do want to just highlight one of the things that Dr. Hammond said as well, though, which is that even in the Public Works Committee meeting that I attended, and further on in the Finance Committee meeting when Doug Walker was there were ideas, engineering ideas, changes to what was previously done 5 years ago that I think would both be potential cost savings opportunities and also improvements in the design. So, I wouldn't use what was done in the past as the guideline for what we should do going forward. But certainly there does seem to be opportunity, and I think that the discussion of this ought to be included among the other things. Maybe it goes forward, maybe it doesn't, but at any rate, I think we should introduce it tonight, just so we have the option on the table.
So the question is, do we want to introduce it tonight? Would somebody?
So I move that we introduce by title the Bernards Avenue project that was proposed by Public Safety through the Public Works Committee and came to the Finance Committee meeting. I propose that we introduce it by title tonight, and then it be on the agenda for March 9th.
For a public hearing.
Second.
I think my only concern is about how it's going to be executed. So if it doesn't preclude us from how it gets executed, because it's not written, wasn't prepared, then I would be okay with it, because then at least we have between now and then to talk about it. But I would not be in favor of doing it as it was originally explained during the Public Works Committee.
Fair enough. So I moved it.
And moving forward, it actually now makes it so that the public can come and start making comments as well.
Exactly.
But by then, for the next meeting, we will have the impact on the debt, we'll have the impact on the budget, and we'll know whether it, what's doable and what's not.
Well, it's a two-step process, understanding that, and also saying the scope of work, exactly what we get for 1.2 million
Yeah,
or
but is it
plus or
possible
minus.
to connect the redevelopment with
Yeah, we
the
should.
walkability between now and then?
I think there's-
It's
I don't know if
like
you can do
50
that.
feet. If you read the walkability study, you'll see there is mention of, that as something to
We did talk
consider.
about that when we were
We all
walking, and then
walked
how nice
towards,
it would be to
and
get over
everybody
there.
looked over and said, "Oh my God, it's right there, the train station. Like
Yeah.
you could throw a rock and hit it, and why isn't there a path?" So I'll send you the link to it.
I don't think anything that's
No,
been
yeah, I
discussed
get
to date is at any odds, or is
No.
it doesn't dovetail well with what's also envisioned and may or may not happen as part of the redevelopment. The train station report, which was provided by the mayor via email to all council members earlier this week, did envision some work there, but we need permissions for that, we need financing for that. There may be grants from New Jersey, what do they call it, Transit Village money, so all those things need to happen. I don't think this project stands alone because it gets that better connectivity even over the bridge that's there now. And it doesn't prevent us from doing the other projects that have been envisioned by the plan that the mayor sent
I
around
would just
earlier.
wanted to include that engineering,
Absolutely.
so we weren't
Right.
paying for it again.
Okay,
I
so
don't-
we have a
There is no
motion
engineering.
and a second.
We need to do the title. Is it 1.2 million?
1.25,
1.25?
Yeah.
and 5% is the bond would be for 95% of 1.25.
Right, okay, so it will be, we've got to be more detailed because it's a bond ordinance.
Right, we'll have to have.
I'll
He's
move
gonna-
that ordinance
he's gonna read it.
2020-1838, bond ordinance appropriating $1.25 million and authorizing the issuance of 5% of the amount bonds or notes of the borough for the Bernards Avenue Improvement Project, authorized to be undertaken by the Borough of Bernardsville in the County of Somerset, New Jersey, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, and the public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. Monday, March 9, 2020.
Okay,
So that's what I'm moving, and
And-
was there a second?
I think Jeff seconded it.
Sorry,
so-
I thought we were only moving the engineering piece of it. So it's the whole, it would be for the entire project estimate?
The reason we're moving the entire project estimate is for the same reason we moved the other three ordinances this evening, the bond-related ordinances this evening, is so that they can be bundled and thus get a lower interest rate and have lower fees overall, and we don't have to do any one of these. You know, each one can be individually evaluated on March 9th and either passed or not passed as part of that.
Yeah,
And so we can,
The
I get
the
that.
engineering piece would come out of the operating budget, so that would be a separate, that you could, I think it was $75,000 for engineering,
I
that would
think it
be,
was in that ballpark, yeah.
part of
Yeah.
operating budget, so that we would approve kind of on its own, except aside from the bond.
That could be used toward the 5% down payment too.
Right, the
Rough-
5%
rough
down
estimate,
payment,
exact-
it could be,
Exact numbers, so if I may put them in the record, it's authorizing $1,250,000 is the appropriation, authorizing bonds or bans in the amount of $1,187,500, and appropriating the down payment, which will be $59,375.
Oh, that's what we need, the 59, right, okay.
So I'll second, or does?
No, it was already seconded, so now we need an all in favor.
and this is just aye or nay?
Yes.
It's just
Votes of voice.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I'm supposed to abstain, sorry. Abstain.
Okay, and abstain, one. All right, so
So now I
then,
have to get
Thinking, but I
back
didn't
to
say
my.
anything
didn't.
yet.
oh, you were still in the middle of your report.
Oh,
But she wants to
sure.
say
No,
aye or nay.
I'm just thinking, cause I haven't actually said anything yet,
Oh, you didn't
but
say, okay.
no,
I
cause
didn't
I'm
hear.
just, I mean, I guess if we can go, then March 9th, we can figure it out. It's just, there's not much time between now and then for everything that needs to get done, but okay, all right, let's go. Yes, go ahead,
All right, there's an aye.
sorry.
I just noted for
Talk
the
to
record,
myself for a minute.
all these bond ordinances will require 4 affirmative votes for passage.
Right,
And since Christine recuses herself, it means no matter how many of you are here, it will take 4 votes to adopt on second reading.
Okay,
Before you
This
go
and
on-
the other this one as
Yeah.
well as the other three.
That's
yes,
correct. Any bond
each of them.
Before you go on with the rest of your report, since you mentioned the walkability study, weren't they supposed to do a formal presentation? I know there was a report. I've
They
seen it.
came and
They
presented.
did? Good, 'cause I don't still remember them coming here. Okay.
Okay,
Maybe
you have more
that's
to your
formal
report.
White Neck Road, we're expecting a DEP permit by May 2020, advertising bid in May, opening bid in June. The bottom line is the work is gonna be performed on White Neck Road while school is out,
Oh, good.
so that's good. I'll try to go quicker. Hull and Lindaberry, that's happening pretty much very soon, so, we're awarding a contract March 9th. And there's some trees that have to be removed, but the residents have been notified so that if they're, anticipating any type of utility connections, they need to do it quick. Like now. That
somebody
was
should
Hull
put that
and
on the
Lindaberry.
website if it's not there.
They've gotten letters, is that on the website? It might be.
Which one is this?
The Hull and Lindaberry telling them residents about utilities.
I'm not, I know that the bid package is up there, but I'm not sure if any other document
Okay,
was. I
so
can
maybe,
check on that.
yeah, check with, maybe we could put like a generic letter without a name and address, and just have it as a notice or something, for just those residents. Okay, so Lloyd Road, that's also gonna be, approved in early March of this year.
I didn't take notes.
Mill and Paves, we talked about earlier today where, Chestnut, the resident came up to us from Chestnut, so there's no present funding, but they are roads that need to be looked at. The dam outside at the pond, there's 30,000 available, and it's gonna require some additional funding. And that's also being requested in our budget for this year. It's a requirement because of, safety requirements, so it's not like we can not do it, but that's one of the items that are gonna come up in our budget. The pond culvert, that's underway, the fixing for the drainage over there, right? Which is is gonna be good once that's all fixed up.
Dry that out back there.
Yeah.
Then we can get
Hopefully,
our,
yes.
then we can get our path going around.
Yes, so, the library roof and HVAC, that's all in the works. The slope project might be done, which, as you may recall, are the roads up on that hill behind town, where we had the issues with the soil, so I think that's all closed out. We had brought up an issue about lighting near Millicent's statue and the benches there, because it's pretty dark there at night, and we decided that when we talk about the downtown revitalization, we'll make sure that that's part of it. And last but not least, my favorite item that night was the walking path around Polo Grounds. So we sat down with a nice big map and we looked at where a nice loop would go. So you have the turf and then you have the 3 fields. So the engineer is gonna start working on a nice plan for that, for us, for everyone. Yay. And that's it for Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Housing zoning, Jeff, we have your report. You have anything you'd like to add?
No, you have the 2 reports, the housing and the zoning report. And Christine had asked a question about why it says grand total at the bottom and there's nothing there. The grand total is on the top right-hand corner. It's something that's on these pre-printed sheets that we're working with SDL to have that removed.
The reason I asked that, if I can interrupt, is because, and you had written a nice letter in response to our last meeting where I guess the zoning board chairperson had said that, some things weren't being done. And when I look at your reports every month, I mean, there's definitely work being done because there's so many on there. So I was just looking for a total to kind of put it in perspective for if any, resident were to ask about how much work is actually being done. It is quite a bit, and I see it.
There is. And segueing into that, I did listen to the tape from last meeting 2 times, and also read our reporter's synopsis of it. And you got my letter, and I tried to cover half a dozen topics that the chairman talked about. The bottom line really is that everything was done according to the municipal land use law.
Right.
I was informed of issues that didn't meet any resolutions or any conditions of resolution. Those applicants were provided letters that Renee and I put together, and consequently they're all back at the board now, the big one being the hot box.
I saw it today. Wow,
which
they're gonna.
has been removed.
Yeah.
So that went back to
Well,
the
yeah,
board
they
of
were.
adjustment.
There's a giant hole there now.
Right.
They dug it out and there's pipes sticking up. Yeah.
It's going to be buried.
Yeah.
And as you know, that took us all by surprise, not just me, not just engineering, not just construction, but everybody had no idea that was going to happen. So they went back to the board, they went with a plan of burying this hot box. The Board of Adjustment approved that last week, and now you see the results of that. They're now burying it. The second one was a lady that wanted windows in her garage, or the resolution required windows in the garage. It's not a UCC requirement, but before my sign off, I reviewed the plans, I saw no windows, and I wrote her a letter and said, you either put your windows in, or you go back to the board. And right now she's scheduled for being back to the board in March.
But Jeff, can I ask you a question? While that's being done, it's not, you're not expected to go over and check the site during the construction,
Well,
right? That's not
no.
what you do.
No, it's
Okay.
not my job to do that. We, to Christine's point, we issued 200 zoning permits last year. That means there's 200 active projects in town. Some of them are county size, some of them are generator size. We don't go around looking at where they are on these projects. We rely on people to tell us if there's an issue. Jeff, Renee, could you go see? And we get those calls all the time. Whether it be from a Board of Adjustment member or one of the council or just a resident of town. No, we're very happy to have deputy zoning officers helping us out.
Can I ask a question along the same lines? I think you've already sort of answered the question, but were there any scheduled inspections that you were supposed to do that did not occur?
On any particular project?
On the particular 2 projects that were mentioned in the meeting, were there, like, in other words, were you scheduled to go out there and do an inspection and it didn't happen?
All inspections that we do, we zoning, are scheduled and we do.
So there were none missed?
None missed.
And then during any of the inspections you did the deficiencies that were specifically mentioned, the hot box, so during any inspection, did you miss that the hot box was there? Or did you miss that the windows weren't there? Or when you went for the inspection that was scheduled, you noted the deficiencies?
Yes, we noted the deficiencies. There's various milestones along the project, and depending on how complex the project is, depends on how many milestones. The windows, for example, that had a zoning permit to begin, and it has a zoning sign-off to finish. Before the finish, it's inspected, and we saw there was no windows. With the county, but there was a lot of work going on there, and that just really arrived overnight, virtually, to all our surprises.
Conti was surprised by it.
Yes.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And I think
Conti wasn't happy with it either, was he?
No.
No.
a really important point, we initiated this project about 9 months ago now, is what we call, every month we go over our top 10 residential and top 10 commercial issues. And they stay that until they're resolved by this team. I'm not gonna say this definitively because I didn't go back and look line by line. I would be willing to say that all of the top 10 lists that we started with have all been turned over. I know in the last meeting alone, 4 of the properties that were in the top 10 for residential were solved. There were issues that were no longer. So I can say definitively, as I've watched this relatively closely, that progress has been made, and it's
Due
due
to
to
Jeff and
Jeff
Renee.
and Renee.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. We turned over those 10 and there's a new 10 and now those are halfway gone.
Done.
So I just have one last question.
Yes.
You mentioned that, and I think it was the one where the windows weren't placed where they were supposed to be. And the person who's built this was given the option to either add the windows as originally approved or go back and ask for, I guess, is it called a variance or?
Well,
But what I'm saying is, do we need to offer that option, or can we just tell them, put the windows in like you said you were going to? Can we just give them one option, or are we required to give them both options?
in land use, there is always a provision that you can go back to the board that gave you the resolution.
So we're not giving them more freedom than that the law says we have to do that.
No, there might be 10 conditions in the resolution, and there may be one that they thought they could do it at the time, but now they don't want to do it, and they always have the option to go back to it.
So we're not giving them more freedom than the law dictates them.
So when they go back to the board, the lady's going to say, I don't need the windows, I've planted trees, the neighbours from that side, they don't mind that there's no windows there, they don't want to see my junk in the garage anyway. So, and then it's up to the board whether they approve removing that condition.
Okay.
Jeff, on the multifamily, how many of those did we start with and how many have been resolved? Do you know offhand?
Percentage-wise, we're around 80–85% complete.
Okay.
And there's been about 10 to 15 that have gone to the board or are waiting to go to the board. And the rest have been, they've provided us
with the proof
that they were two-family before 1971. And whether that's 50 to 75, it's somewhere in that range.
So they're not, the workload they were anticipating at the Board of Zoning is not really happening?
No. Now, the provision is any that we've deemed to be two-family before 71, if those property owners now want to sell,
They would have to
go
go.
back to the board then for the non-conformity.
But as long as they keep them, they're fine?
That's correct.
Okay. And the other, I think the last issue was the signage.
Yes, signage is,
And I think we're kind of in limbo now with our signage regulations, so it's gotta be tough to enforce, cause,
yes. Yeah, for instance, the coffee shop.
right,
The coffee shop has a large signer. It's the same size as Buono Pizza is, so it doesn't stick out. But the ordinance that will be approved, hopefully by the
planning
board and then by you, will allow for a sign to be 1 square foot of sign for every square foot of frontage.
oh, okay, that's a good way to do it, yeah.
Where now you take the frontage, you divide it by 5%, and then that's what you have, which is a very much smaller number. So they're going to have these signs more visible to the walking public as opposed to the driving public.
And I can speak directly to the signage because it was a
Yeah,
decision
you guys
that
did that whole survey.
we collectively made, and this was towards the end of the summer. Jeff and I actually did a walkabout. We held hands the whole time. It was quite nice. And it was the exact same time when the sign ordinance was being developed and coming through. We made a collective decision that since the ordinance was changing in a substantial way in the matter of months, not to make people revert to things that would then have to revert again. So that's, actually, this is coming through the planning board in the next meeting, and it'll be in front of this council for discussion probably in a month.
But
Sounds
there were
like a
some things
wise
that were acted
approach.
upon immediately. There
There
were, for
were,
example,
yes.
some spinners, and I forget what the sale signs.
Yeah,
the
those
sales,
sales-
the
yeah,
sales
those wavy
that
things.
we pointed out, and the team acted upon it, and those were removed. So I think I'll just publicly say this: we have 2 really fine professionals who are doing our housing and zoning inspection, and the recommendations from the Board of Adjustment at the last meeting, which had been actually repeated from a year before, are unfounded, unfair, and they're based on lack of information or misinformation. So, I think we need to publicly thank Jeff and Renee for and actually I worked with him not just on housing and zoning last year as the liaison to that committee, but on the shade tree as well, which involves inspection. So they're doing a really fine job.
Well, I do think we have 2 issues that are important. One is communication and one is clarity. Communication, I think, is generally insufficient from a variety of places coming out of different departments and or different committees that we need to make sure that we're enhancing. And the clarity issue we continue to address. I mean, right now, since we're on housing, there's a consolidated property, commercial and residential ordinance that's being combined. There was overlap, there was lack of clarity. Jeff's been part of this project. That is something that probably will come back, depending on how the agenda is on the 9th, it'll be later in March. I mentioned the sign ordinance that needs to be redone. We have zoning overlays that are changing. I mean, there are a lot of things that are changing here that needs a lot of discussion.
Yeah, and I think part of it is maybe a perception problem as well, and I've asked for what would be the idea, what would be the process if it's not working, what would you like to see? And I didn't get an answer. In order for the Board of Adjustment to feel like things are being done properly, and I'm not sure what that breakdown is, that they have this perception that things aren't getting done, because it's obvious that they are. So I don't know how to communicate that better to them.
Yes, I don't know either. With them being an autonomous board, and that's the way they like to be, they don't want to be involved with things because it may blur their decision-making process. So I frankly don't know. I don't know how to do that.
Well, I think, to follow on what Councilman Hammond said, my questions have been answered satisfactorily, which is that the inspections that were scheduled occurred as scheduled. The inspections, when they did occur, noted the deficiencies that existed at the time of the inspection, and that the homeowners have been notified properly. So I feel like we've answered the concerns that were listed in the materials that were provided to us online, as well as the discussion tonight.
I would like to just add one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't mind, I don't speak much to you, but I will say I was a zoning board secretary in the beginning phases of my zoning career. So I learned a lot about zoning. And to highlight the report that's supposed to come out of the zoning board at the end of each year, it actually is to highlight variances that were granted that were in max amount. So if you had a lot of bulk variances, for example, for like front yard setbacks in the R5 zone, you know, those are items on the report that you would want to highlight. And that's part of your annual report, not necessarily enforcement. Enforcement's actually not part of that annual report. I used to do them for the board, so I recall. But, you know, so I'd like to know like what variances, you know, were granted at a mass amount, you know, with the zoning board, to just understand, well, then maybe we need to change our zoning regulations, which we're in the process of doing. We're in the process of changing, you know, a tremendous amount of our land use development. So with that being said, you know, that's where it's helpful to have the zoning board to say, you know, we had 7 variances for this one zone, and, you know, maybe we need to change the accessory structure setback to 3 instead of 5, so that, you know, these residents aren't going for variances all the time. So that is the purpose of the annual report, so that, you know, the town is aware of the issues of zoning.
That keep coming up.
Because you don't want everyone to go to the zoning board for the same variance.
Right, if
You
we
know, it
could
just
change
becomes-
the zoning
yeah,
itself,
exactly.
right?
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight
Yeah,
that.
no, that's
I
a good
think
point.
that
Thank you.
That's really what will help us move forward with zoning.
Great, thank you. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. We should
Yeah, I'm like,
ask
did we
for
not
that in
get
the
that
next
out of their
report.
report? So we should
We
ask
did get
for
a
that.
list of the
We did.
numbers, yeah, of how many cases they heard and what they were about, but I don't think there was a conclusion, like a summary or a recommendation of
recommendation.
what changes in zoning should be. They then got into
They
it.
said the pools.
Yeah, we talked about the
Yeah.
pools.
That was
It
really
was just the pool as a separate building or whatever, it was a structure.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
thank
I
you.
thought, yeah, I thought clarity of roles and responsibilities just between zoning and construction were amiss in the conversation. And I guess, I mean, my only question would, you know, instead of waiting for this annual report to come up, and to Jeff's point, the same issues coming up year over year, how do we recommend to that board that they bring up their issues in a more timely manner rather than waiting for an annual report?
I guess we could ask for more frequent reports. Can we do that? I mean, they're required by law to do an annual,
That's right, you can ask for more.
but we can ask for more
And
reports.
Renee's absolutely right. The purpose of the report is to summarize the applications received during the prior year and to make recommendations for changes to the zoning ordinance based on those applications. It's-
So the question
report
is
has no
6
goal.
months long enough to develop a trend?
I
Is it
think that's
useful,
the issue.
you know?
At some point, you need
Yeah.
enough data to make it.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know necessarily that we need additional reports, but just a way for them to voice any concerns or issues that they feel have not been addressed or were not addressed, so we don't wait until January of the following year if there was an issue that they felt was there in March. Right, I mean,
Do
what would they,
do they have the
what would they
option?
normally
Do they have
do?
the option of coming to a
I
meeting
think
at
that
any
door's always
time?
open. If they have, if they think there's an issue with an ordinance, they can certainly bring it to our attention.
Right, they don't have to. They don't have to wait. Like they could come to any meeting.
That's right. They can always send a memo
Okay.
to the council and say, you know, this ordinance needs to be clarified or changed or whatever,
Yeah.
mid-year. But as the mayor said, by the law, they have to do it annually.
And they could go to Ralph as well,
Absolutely.
or directly to zoning.
Yes.
Or whomever. Yeah,
Yes,
we should probably advise them to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
and just to add to that, you know, whenever there's an issue with any, you know, question of zoning enforcement or a property maintenance, you know, question, anyone in the community or, you know, driving through could come to our office or give us a call and let us know, like, hey, this doesn't seem right. You know, it gives us an opportunity to react. Or, you know, maybe we already know about it and we can let you know, like, we're on it, you know, we've been, you know, working with this individual. But from, I think, like, just to go back to the original report of the annual report of the zoning board, it's really to once again highlight what was done for that year, what variances were granted. That's what they should be educating you on, so that you know, should we be making a change to the zoning ordinance. It's not necessarily to, to recommend enforcement recommendations. It's really just meant for an annual report of the zoning board.
I think also if the Board of Adjustment have specific issues about project, they should voice that to Frank Matola, who's their administrator, and have him either talk to Ralph or come directly to us. I've never seen a Board of Adjustment member come to our office. There's just not that interaction. And I understand they need to stay away, but if something's really bothering them, they should come. We're not going to bite you. Talk to us.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I know you've always been very receptive to all questions, and I hear that from the community, and I know anytime I've ever brought anything up, you're always responsive, so thank you.
Yes, they are.
It's your job.
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're
It's
here
our
for,
job.
so we're always welcome.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any liaison reports? Anybody been
Planning
to?
board met.
Yes.
So planning board met on February 13th. According to the chair, it was their single fastest meeting in history. We already addressed one change, which was 1831 this evening. I mentioned that they're going to start reviewing the various zoning and/or changes to signage in the downtown. So as that goes through the board, I'll make sure that I update this committee, so that way we're ready to have an intelligent discussion and informed discussion when it gets here.
I thought they were gonna finish that this month.
It's scheduled for the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
So, but the next, one of the things that they asked me to bring up at council, which I'll do now, is the discussion of Rushman Farm. And I know that there's been swirling discussions about whether or not it may or may not be coming for sale sometime in the future. If that's the case, there's a lot of information which I think this council will need to make, again, an informed choice, from the existing zoning to what could be done through purchases through either through the county or through the borough. So I actually asked Jack, there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to need at the council level to make these decisions. Do you want them all to come through me, through the planning board, or are there things that the council wants to get itself as regards to zoning and such forth, so we can make informed choices? I don't know if anyone has opinion on that. There's not an official thing on the table that is asked to prepare the council for this decision.
Well, we can talk about that in executive, yes,
Yes,
because it's
it's property
acquisition, so, yeah.
All right. And that was the end of it.
Okay. Jeff, you had a meeting?
Yeah, we had a meeting of the, two things. One is the library, the other is Green Team. So the library board of governors met on February 18. They're very happy that the roof work is commenced and is ongoing. The borough, in terms of other maintenance, is looking at other vendors for the HVAC system, since we haven't been totally happy with the responsiveness of our current vendor, which is Train. I wanted to make a public thank you to the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, which gave a $500 donation to the library. The library's, in terms of social media, now we have over 1,500 followers on Facebook, so that's moving forward. And in terms of other IT related items, the library's moving from laptops to Chromebooks for in-library use, because that's felt to be more amenable to the high school, middle school students who use that technology. And then there was an authorization for Dan Lincoln to go ahead with some architectural design specs, actually specs for 2 sets of double doors, which are failing and which we need to to do in anticipation of the state construction grant that's, the bond act is being applied for.
Excuse me, there was authorization for him to move ahead on that? I thought that was, it was in front of the finance committee, it's being part of the budget this year.
But that we approved it,
request,
that's right,
yes.
we approved it to go as our budget request to you guys.
Got it, thank you.
That's right, sorry.
We need architecture for doors? Sorry, is that what you just said?
Specifications, because there's, those are they were custom-made doors, and the electrical system, that feeds into the doors that they automatically open and close, was rather complex, so the builder, wouldn't consider going ahead unless an architect had done a plan.
Yeah, interesting. Usually the builders provide their own architects, yeah, for little things, but okay.
And, that's it.
And then green team?
The green team, met at the end of January 30th, it was the last meeting. We're moving ahead with the plan to have, in anticipation that the state and perhaps even the municipality will at some point do something on plastic bags, single-use plastic bags. We're gonna have an exchange program that will be done in conjunction with the April e-waste day. And this will be a program where we will if you bring in a certain number of your plastic bags at home, we'll give you a reusable bag. And we were able to obtain them through a recycling grant that Kathy Redling brought to our attention. So we're gonna be moving ahead with that project. It'll be done in conjunction with the e-waste recycling day, which is April 25th.
So Jeff, with that, what's the difference between like, if, I guess, how does it help the community more than if the single-use plastic bags are reused again at home? You know what I mean? Like if they use them for garbage bags or something, should they just keep them, or is it better to bring them back? Or is it kind of 6 in 1, half dozen the other?
At some point, those single-use bags end up in a garbage dump, and they take literally hundreds of years to degrade. So the movement's gonna be to reduce the use of them in as much as possible.
Eliminate, or like reduce them, meaning don't use them at all, right?
Well, you won't be able to not use
No,
them
I
at
mean,
all.
sorry.
So for example, if you looked at the draft of the legislation that was moving through the state, there were some exceptions or some things where you know, they would be unavoidable to use them. But if you could cut back 75, 80, 90% of it, then you do a lot. So in terms of your shopping, your routine shopping, you go to King's or ShopRite, the idea would be to replace them entirely.
Yeah, okay.
Now, if you went, you know, some other places, it would be impossible to do that. So I don't think anybody's naive enough to think that they're going to go away completely.
Yeah.
But
We said we need to go after the manufacturers of the food products. Their packaging is
it's all
save us more
plastic.
than the single-use bag.
and
but anyway.
we found a couple vendors that will actually take the plastic bags that we acquire in our exchange, and instead of putting them in a dump somewhere, they can actually chop them up into really small micro particles and then reuse them, so like they can make like picture frames and things like that out of them.
There's a
Benches.
program
bench
for
out of it.
tracks that does, you know, Dex makes the wood, the fake wood. Matter of fact, somebody just sent me the information and we were gonna start looking into it. You select a 6-month period and you collect a certain number of bags, you get companies and a lot of people involved in your town. And for so many pounds that you hand in, they will give you a bench made out of tracks.
Well, Berners Township did it with the benches.
That's not a bad
And we felt that for the first go-around, this is not gonna be a one-off deal. For the first go-around, we just wanted to get the idea, the exchange, and we wanted to get these bags into people, the reusable bags, into people's hands, so that we start getting people thinking about it. But at some point in the future, we could certainly consider doing it. The difference is that you'd have to acquire a lot of poundage in order to get a bench.
Well, that's what you get companies involved, like one of the local stores.
I mean, I brought the idea to the Green Team in part because we do this at Atlantic Health, and they do it twice a year, and between the 5 hospitals, they collect something like 80,000 of the single-use bags.
I agree with the collection, especially I love the bench idea and some of the new parks they make. But don't most people nowadays have reusable bags?
I gotta tell you,
Really?
I packed at ShopRite for like 2 hours as part of one of their food programs, and I was shocked at how many people did not have reusable
That's
bags.
counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
I would imagine
I
in
was
today's
really
world, most people.
surprised.
Well, just look at all those yellow bags. I don't wanna pick on ShopRite, I shop both there and King, so, but if you look at those yellow bags, they're all over the place,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
have
why
to
they
say,
have
I'm
those bins
guilty
out
of
front where
forgetting
they
them.
collect them. I would say
Coming
it's
home from work.
I just leave them in my
it's a
car.
real
Yeah.
minority
Thousands of
that
them.
use those reusable bags.
They're by my front door. to bring them.
The other thing, to quickly go through the deer management program is, had done well this past year. We're gonna try to enlist some large property owners for the spring, see whether they can be part of the program as well. In terms of the farmer's market update, as you probably know, that Chief Valentine vetoed the idea of outside vendors because of safety concerns. Regarding the community garden, we are able to offer some new open plots, and Wanda's working on that to make that announcement. I think there'll be I think she may have already made that announcement because there's a March 1 deadline. And then lastly, we're working with the library on seeing whether we can use, there was a TV series on Keystone Species that was part of the Nature series, and it was very well done. We're gonna see whether we can use that as an activity for the library to show.
Okay. Charlie, I forget what you're on.
Open space, but Sunday I couldn't make it.
I have rec and,
Sorry,
Oh, did you
Sorry,
have
go ahead.
something? Yeah, shade tree, yeah.
sorry. So Shade Tree, they had tree service company, they talks about permit matters, that they had some concerns with. One of the resulted, ideas was to come to the council with some more tree ordinance, updates. So they're working on those, we'll see those in the future. They mentioned that the tree giveaway is happening on E-Waste Day on April 24th, to give away saplings, until they run out. But they also have a few larger trees that somebody donated, and they won't have them for everybody, but they were gonna give them away by drawing, like randomly pick somebody's name, or 5 or 10 people's names, however many of the larger trees they have. They also talked about shade tree planting projects ongoing in town. I also went to the HPAC meeting. The HPAC meeting talked about some old business that they've been covering for a while. They talked about wanting to give input to 271 Mine Brook property, and they wanted to give input around Quimby Lane in that area as well. So they're looking for the right method to provide their feedback on those things. They have a couple other ideas pending. One is about coming up with a demolition ordinance for historic buildings in town. So they're going to work on that over the coming months. That's nothing that's pending in the near future, but something that they're working on. That's about it.
Tom, you mentioned some ordinance work, and I had a citizen that was talking to me just the other day. There's confusion about, and I know, Renee's not here anymore, for dead trees, whether or not there are fees or not, and I don't know if that was.
That's specifically what they're talking about, updating the ordinance to be clear on what is required as it relates to dead or dying trees, and that's being issued. What wording do we need to change? Is it clear? Is it concise? What are the costs associated with? Those are we should expect those changes to come from Shade Tree Committee to us soon. I think they probably need a month or so. So they only meet once a month. They probably need 1 to 2 months to come up with the changes and bring them back to us.
But people do take down dead trees without, you don't need a permit for a dead tree.
I don't want to say what is and isn't required, but what they're trying to do is clarify for everybody exactly what it is, so that there's no confusion, and that basically.
Yeah, they definitely have to verify it's dead before they take it down.
Well, that's exactly one of the key things that's being talked about too. It's like, how do you do that, and who does it? When do you do it? How much? Okay, so those are the things I had. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting used to this liaison reports and how it works. So there were radon kits that were being given out for free while supplies had lasted. It was down at Basking Ridge, but they're free for Bernardsville as well since we pay into that. I don't think we had them here, right? Only in Basking Ridge.
No, I've
So
gone to
Bernards Township.
Bernards Township a number of times.
Yeah, so they're there. I don't know if they're still there because we didn't have a liaison report last
Well, they only
meeting.
meet every 2 months, right? Didn't you talk about health department?
Yeah, but they sent out the flyer with the free radon kit information in between my last two liaison reports, so I didn't wanna jump in last council meeting and just say it, so maybe in the future I will. And then, they moved so that's it for Board of Health, cause they didn't meet again. That was the only thing that came up. For Rec Committee, they moved the senior pizza bingo night to February 27th. And it's going to be at the St. Bernard's Church at 5 p.m. I think. They can check on they could double check on that for me. But it was moved originally. It was supposed to be the 19th, and they moved it to the 27th.
Well, they had to change the venue.
Yeah, they had to change it. And then there are also the rec committee's in process of updating the pool rules and regulations because they haven't been looked at in a couple of years, so they're just going to revisit them. And they're also putting together surveys for what we had asked for one of the last council meetings for at the end of the seasons or at the end of programs
like
to
an
give generic
evaluation.
surveys, so that people can provide their inputs.
Good.
And that's it.
The only one I had was the open space meeting with the neighbors at 250 or 260?
251.
251 Claremont, which is one of the properties adjacent to Peter's Tract. We invited the 200 feet radius of the property and got a great turnout and great feedback from those residents. Essentially what it boils down to is that, they like the peace and tranquility of that land, and the consensus was they'd like to keep it as calm and tranquil as possible. So walking paths are awesome, but not much beyond that. But they did have some great ideas, and I don't know if anyone's been up to hiking paths where you, like in the Adirondacks, and other examples were given where you sign in prior to entering, so that there's kind of a record of how many people are using the trails, because a lot of times people say to me, oh, nobody uses the trails, but I think people are using them, there's just no record of it.
No way to track it.
So in the Adirondacks and other places, there's just like a box where there's like a pencil that's been hanging there for 20 years, and you just put your name down on a book, and I think that it would be a nice way for us to kind of gauge what the actual user. I think in the Adirondacks, it's mainly because people get lost and they want to be able to find them. But for us, it would kind of more be like for us to just to know who's going in and out of our trails. So that was a great idea.
Camera up, and every time that somebody walks by the camera, you can.
I guess that's one thing.
And they did ask, and we have to pass this on to, I guess, Doug or John. I never know who's doing what now. The lights are on 24/7, and they'd like them to go off at 9 o'clock, I think they said.
Oh, right. I guess there must be a timer issue.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a timer on it, but the lights are on all night, so I don't know if that's something doable or if they're on all night for a reason. So if we
We'll
could.
find out.
This is at 251?
Yeah.
The one that we,
Okay. All right. Next was the Somerset County Food Stock Challenge, and this actually came out of the Somerset County Governing Officials Association. And what they're trying to do is get all 21 towns in the county to participate in this challenge. And they've grouped them into different groups based on size, because they want to make it a competition as to who collects the most food.
didn't we win this last year? We did this last year.
No, I think Ralph did a thing. Didn't you do your own? Well, I don't think it was the food stock. Oh, yeah. Wait, was it the food stock?
Yeah, I think it was. It was our
Is that
auditor.
Bob Swisher? Yeah.
Bob Swisher is, yes.
Right. This is his project, and now he's trying to get all 21 towns. So they've grouped us with Raritan, Bedminster, Bound Brook, and Manville based on size. And I think in the past they did it mostly through employees, but now they want to make it town-wide. So, with local groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, senior groups, whatever, and really do a big food drive. So it would be the month of April. And so I think what they're looking for is just, our agreement that we will participate.
Yeah.
Sounds
So,
good.
we all good with that? And they're gonna send us flyers and stuff.
I saw the group they had us in, though, in our competition, there's some bigger towns than us, it's stacked. I guess this.
Well, no, actually, the one, isn't it, I
Group
think
A.
I think we're competing, wait a minute, with, oh yeah, the towns in Group B, which are supposedly our size-ish. Actually, I was surprised that Bedminster isn't that much bigger than us.
No, it's almost the
In terms
same.
of population, they're twice our size.
No, I don't think they are.
No,
They're
they're
over
the same.
20,000, are they not?
No,
8 something.
8 something,
nine.
yeah, they're not.
Well, Baskin, I know they're over 20,
Yeah,
but I
no,
thought
Bedminster
was
is
as well.
not, that's which was surprising.
They
because
have
other than
more
the hills,
miles.
they
Take that
don't.
back then, but we should beat them.
Yeah. So that's our
The
group.
gauntlet down, Jeff.
So, I will tell them that we're gonna play. The Comcast consent public hearing date, we have to do that.
We have to do that, that was just basically for council information, to know that that's upcoming, and it's pretty much locked into that date, because there were time frames we had to advertise and have the public hearing, so that's pretty much, will be coming up on April 3rd.
How often do we do that? Do we renew that contract? Yeah.
I forget, it's a long time, I wanna say something like 10 years or so, I'm not exactly sure, but it's not like every year or so.
Right, do we ever get public out for it? Do you, just curious.
I don't remember the last time
When we did it, yeah.
one, no. I wanna say it was sometime in like maybe 2005, 2006, when Verizon came in.
Yeah, and that's at a regular meeting, right?
Yes.
We do that at a regular meeting, okay. The well testing, we'll have those kits again, is that what we're doing?
Selling them.
And is it March 30th to April 3rd is what we've agreed to is the best
That's the
time?
date that works best for us, and American Headwaters supplies us with the kits, some are for radon testing, and then well testing for like lead and all that in your water, so we get all the kits here, people can come in and buy them.
How many do we get?
We get a lot of them, we get maybe like 10 of each or so, of each different category, I mean, well, more than half of that. But,
Let's put it this way, did we run out last
No,
year?
no, so maybe it's more than 10, maybe, let's say 20 or so, we really haven't gotten that many people come in, looking for them, so we've had enough.
Okay, what's next? Mayor's update? Yes. First I wanted to congratulate the chief here for our Department of Public Health and Safety for getting more than a perfect score on the this what do they call it? The National Incident Management System for the evaluation for emergency management. I think we got all the 100% on the regulars and then 15 in the additional bonus points. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
February 11th, I met with Pat Hoagland of Branstetter Carroll to get our comprehensive recreation plan started. He sent us a list of the data that they need to collect first up, and I gave that to Ralph, and it's been disseminated to the different departments that need to collect it. I think they're figuring that'll take them about a month, and then we'll start, once they have that, we'll start the process. Yeah, the food stock challenge I told you about. On the 14th, Joe DeMarco, John, Tom, and I met with one of the developers, and we're gonna continue to meet with them from the Quimby Lane, and just so that we have a better sense of what they're looking at and what's doable as we go through writing the plan. February 19th, I met with Walter Lane, who's the Somerset County Director of Planning, to talk about our redevelopment process, get them caught up on what we're doing, because and actually, I got to send this to everybody. He had a booklet that the county had done in 2017. It was called Supporting Priority Investment in Somerset County, which really had a really good study on every town in the county and looking at the downtown, what were the challenges, what were the recommendations. It was really pretty good. So I'm going to send that to everybody here as well as the redevelopment committee, because I'm not sure it ever went anywhere. And it was a lot of the things we're talking about now, and some of the same ideas that we've already come up with, and it was really a good report. So he shared that, and also he said he's gonna let me know that sometimes there's grants that come up and things through the county that we may be eligible for, so I just wanted to get us more connected with them. We did the meeting with the residents yesterday up at Peters Tract. Don't forget, we have the strategic planning session on March 2nd from 4 to 8 at the Bernards Inn.
As far as the resident input for Peters Track, will we get like a summary of what was?
I think Pat was writing it all down, so I'm assuming
we'll get a report.
And that, yeah, and what I'd like to do is share that as well with Branstead or Carroll, because there was almost like it was a focus group for that project, so. And I also just got this today from the Borough of Bound Brook, from the mayor in Bound Brook saying, I'm writing to express my sincere gratitude for your fire department emergency services participation in fighting the Bound Brook fire and saving our borough from even greater devastation. Bound Brook experienced a destructive fire on Main Street in its downtown area. 2 major apartment buildings were under construction. The fire resulted in their complete loss. 3 smaller structures were also destroyed. The fire began at 8 p.m. on Sunday night, January 12th, and the fire was not completely extinguished until the next day. Your municipality's prompt and heroic contribution to our disaster will live in our Bound Brook history. To show our gratitude, they've enclosed a Bound Brook challenge coin. It says, and I invite you to send 1 or more emergency service vehicles to participate in our Memorial Day parade. So, yeah, I don't know, because I know a lot of them are in our parade, but I think that's quite an honor to be invited. So I will pass this on to the chief and this little coin. But I thought it was really nice that they sent something specifically to acknowledge them. What else do I have? Got the food stock. I think that was everything. Okay, I think that was my report. And that was correspondence. I don't think we had any other, did we?
The correspondence was the Raritan Headwater.
Oh,
stream
yes,
cleanup.
the stream
Just for the
cleanup,
website, yeah.
which is the April 18th from 9 to 12. They have the registry. You can go online and register for your site. I think we usually have a couple of sites, but we meet here.
It's all site 32, and Borough
Which
Pond.
is Borough Pond.
And
So
then-
we start here and then they kind of send us out, so.
Their request is to have this on our website. I think that's fine
Yes.
with me.
Yeah, I think we do that every year anyway, so
Yep.
Yeah,
we're
it's on
okay with
council
that.
website.
Yeah.
Okay. That's right, that was on there. Any unfinished business, thing hanging over?
Just one announcement, we did not get, we had applied for the RideWise Safe Streets Bicycle Corridor Grant, technical assistant grants, we didn't get that, and I think in part because there was an overlap with the walkability study that they already gave us, so
Right.
we were trying to double dip and they didn't go for it.
You can always ask, right?
It didn't hurt us to try.
All they can say is no.
But we collected some valuable information and hopefully we'll recycle that into another effort.
Good, thank you. New business.
Wait, sorry, I had unfinished business. I had a question about the JCP&L increases. Did that ever, do we know whatever happened with,
You mean the water? The water?
yes, is it water? No, I don't know. The one that
Wasn't it
was
American
Bedminster?
Water? Yeah, that was American Water.
Oh, was the
Bedminster
one-
wanted to litigate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not
I know
heard,
we
nobody could attend the first meeting, and I know there was an article in the paper that I think some of the other towns hadn't committed, so I'm not sure where it went. I haven't heard back from them,
Okay.
so I'm not sure if they're going ahead with it or where it went.
Okay. And then the Somerset County, did we ever hear back from them about their potential grants for replacing the turf field when it comes up for?
Jack, I know you heard back from the county about the fees, but did they say anything
was my
about
next
future
topic.
replacement of the field?
They were checking into that. They've never done it, they said.
Yeah.
But Bill Cooper said he would check further and find out for me.
Yeah,
No
and-
response on that yet then. They're just checking further still.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and when I talked to Walter Lane, he kind of gave me the same thing. He said, I guess it would be as it comes up, we'd review it,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think they're willing to make even an informal
No.
commitment at this point in time. that they would do
I'd be
that.
surprised.
Yeah, but
But
at
the
least
fees
if
would
they would
certainly
consider
reduce.
it.
But the
Right.
fees were approved.
The
so,
fees were
yeah.
approved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all. That was my next question.
Any new business?
I have two
You had
items.
something.
Just one thing.
Okay, do you wanna go first?
No.
Okay,
Gina,
Gina?
go first.
I have two actually. One where I would like to ask if we can consider as a council a Board of Ed and council joint venture, for lack of better terms. Because, our property values depend on our council and the Board of Ed working together. We can't do it separately and apart. And I think that we would benefit as a town, and our residents would benefit to have some kind of joint venture with them to talk about how we can collectively move forward.
Ralph, have we ever done, and I know we've done like a joint meeting, but have we ever had like a task force of two of them and two of us, or no?
I thought you put something together, Mayor, did you?
Well,
after
we
the
had a
field thing
meeting
came up,
about
didn't-
the fields, the charging for each other's things that we
So
kind
that
of
wasn't
resolved.
sustained, okay.
But it didn't go any further than that.
Didn't really get resolved either.
When I was I'm sorry, there's a safe route to school, over 10-year-old plan, like a plan, and I think when that was written, there was some kind of committee, a town school committee they called it, but it was disbanded after the plan was written. And I think it was probably good while it lasted, so it might be worth bringing it back.
So what would be the best way to approach that? Should it be through staff or through me, or what do you think? You talking about like just board members, or do you think we should have professionals involved? Like the two administrators
What are you
who
thinking?
work on the budget?
I mean, honestly, I just wanted to open dialogue because I just feel like there isn't much. So maybe in the first meeting, we could figure out what the objective and the mission is and all of that
Well,
stuff. and
why
what we
don't I
really
write a
focus
letter
on.
on behalf of the council and reach out and say, the council discussed this and are interested in pursuing some kind of.
I like the idea of like a task
Task
force. We say
force.
we want to have 3 2-hour meetings, and we want to do it between this date and this date. It gives them something specific to respond to, and then we can always re-up it.
Whatever is, yeah. I mean,
But
I
I'm
just
just
want to
thinking,
make
like,
sure
if-
that we
if-
have goals and objectives.
I'm just worried that they might push back on us if we say we want to have a standing meeting with them every month, and there's something else that they commit. If we give them a specific task, it has a start and an end. Maybe they'll be more receptive to the idea, and then we can do it. We can repeat the process as issues come up. Or
Well, you know what,
basis or something.
how about we wait till after, because we do have this strategic planning meeting, and the superintendent is participating in that process, and it may come out of that discussion.
That's very superintendent was coming,
Yeah.
that's a great avenue to
Yeah,
kick
I think
that
that would be a good segue from
all right, so
there
instead of a
to-
letter, we do it in the.
Yeah,
That's good.
we'll see how that goes and
Yeah.
take it from there.
We also talked about with the rec plan, getting them involved in that, like,
The school, I have to put together a steering committee, so
So
we're gonna have somebody
they'll
from
be
either a board
involved.
member or,
yeah.
people from all the different organizations that are involved.
Maybe would the students be involved too?
You can't get it, they only want 10 to 12 people, so I have to be real choosy about representation.
Okay.
Once we get into the community meetings, the students would be involved. When they do the bigger meetings and then the focus groups, then you can get the kids involved.
Okay. The second item I had was about a process to streamline entrance for new businesses. I know it's been discussed in the past, and I wouldn't remotely know how to start to go about doing this, but if we want to streamline this process, I don't know.
So when I first started on council, I brought this up and I was told that that's not something that we really do. But Olivia, if you go to downtown Bernardsville, she has like a nice outline of where to start if you're a new business. It's like a step-by-step process, and I guess it was determined at that time that that wasn't something we wanted on our website, but it would be suitable for that website.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking because the process is long,
It is.
and so some way to streamline that process,
Right.
not just communicating it out. So I don't know.
Well, that's changing, what is required,
Right,
and that's
I
in
get a
the,
lot of inquiries from businesses that want to come into town. And we have a simple change of use and occupancy form,
Yeah.
which is a one-pager that says what the business is there now or what the business is being planned. And you need to provide a little thumbnail of what you're going to do inside this building. You're going to have a counter, you're going to have tables, you're going to have bookshelves, or wherever it is, and that's if the use is permitted, then it gets my signature and it gets the construction official's signature.
How long might a process like that take?
Depends.
Yeah, less than a week. I mean, Len's in the office 2 days a week. And I'm there, so.
So if the applicant provides you with the information requested, then it doesn't take much to turn it around.
No, if it's a permitted use, then it doesn't take that much to.
I think that's the big.
What's if it's not a
I think
permitted
that's
use?
a
Right, it's a
sticky
not
wicket.
What if it's not?
Then you have to go to the
Then
board of
you have to go
adjustment.
through the Board of Adjustments, the entire process, and that's where things become expensive and lengthy.
So for example, if Audi decides to put in a bank there, a bank is a permitted use where Audi is. But because there's such a radical change of use from a car dealership to a bank, you got to think about parking, you got to think about getting into the place and out of the place. That would require site plan approval, which means it goes to the planning board. The same with the garden centre. If somebody wants to have a restaurant in there or another use radically different from a garden centre, then the same applies there, is that the use dictates the site plan gets approved by the planning board.
I think this is a really good project personally. There's the ad hoc committee that you assembled for revitalization for the downtown. Once a lot of that work gets completed, talking about making it easier for, because they're really the right people to outline that path and to make it shorter.
Yeah, but we can't change, I mean, that's a requirement of the zoning,
I
yes?
can't approve the site plan.
Right, that's the problem.
But we can potentially fix use in zonings and those
Yeah,
types of
well,
items.
and I think part of that, what Common Ground did, that rezoning thing may make that simpler.
Easier.
Yeah,
Yes.
because they've made it less of all these little choppy things and a bigger zoning and listing all the uses, so. But even if it's a permitted use, it's still, the site is changing.
That's right,
So
yeah.
I don't know how you get around that.
You need 25 parking spaces, you only have 15, so you're gonna find 10 more.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna put curbing, you're gonna put drainage, you're gonna put lights up, it's
But if
a
anyone's
process.
gonna know how to make it better, it'll be that group that
Yeah.
you have there.
Yeah. Okay. But it's nice that they have the checklist at least that downtown Bernardsville did, which is helpful, because sometimes just if you read the ordinance, it's really kind of, it's, you know, it's a law. It's like, don't do this, and you can't do that, and you can't, where they have more of, okay, do this, do that, you know, do this. It's a little friendlier.
So are we saying there's no way to streamline the process?
Not if it's a.
Is that what we're?
Pretty much.
I think it is
If it's
streamlined,
a
it's
site
just-
change, you have to have a site plan. That's the
I don't
only
know if it's a
thing.
matter of streamlining as much as having everybody understand the various steps.
I
And
think
Yeah.
that's it.
and the order of the steps that will make it
Right.
easier for you. It isn't really making it streamlined, but it would facilitate it if people knew upfront.
Making it-
Here's your laundry list of things you have to do.
More user friendly.
Yeah,
And
but I
for
mean,
me,
the-
it's with somebody with the sufficient expertise in all of those items, which I know I don't have.
Yeah.
To identify where the barriers really are. And I think that's the first step.
Yeah, I mean, I've just heard from a couple of the new people that are in town about how long the process is in our town compared to other towns.
Did they give
Who
examples?
said that?
Yes, it was the country
She
lady.
said the same thing to me. She was the one who said she couldn't put a flag up, but she could put a flag up.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I think it's just a matter
Country
of,
craft, the new one.
Assumptions.
Country something, right?
she assumed she wasn't
Around
allowed to
from
put
the
a flag up,
coffee
but she
shop,
was.
yeah.
Right. But you can.
Is that a
totally-
task that we can give to the ad hoc committee once they're finished?
Well, I think once we change, the zoning goes through, then I think it's worth redoing based on the new zoning.
I mean, does that satisfy your interest, Gina, or
How,
not really?
how far out is the new
You
zoning?
know.
Well, it's supposed to be in front of the planning board, they're supposed to be going through it now.
Yeah, and I noticed they cancelled their meeting this week.
Yeah.
So, and
They
that was
did.
supposed to be.
And then it should come to
signed,
us, the new zoning, after they're done with it. Well, they have, John Zabo
So if I
was
don't
doing
forget
it,
about
and I think he was out sick or something, so they got backed up,
Yep.
but.
But a partial answer
Forget
is,
about the
from
grades.
the ordinances that we have now, which are
Not like there's
very
anything else to do, just the
cumbersome,
things
there's
to
a
do.
lot of patchwork in there. The new ordinance is
Nice and
an
clean,
easier read and more streamlined.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They really are, I mean, even I could read them, you know, it's the old ones, you're like, what? Okay, And so now Jeff, you had something new.
Yeah, this is just more of an announcement than an action item, but it's, so in addition to our CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team, we have what's called a LEPIC, an LEPC, a Local Emergency Planning Committee, and that met on February 19th. And that's a broad base of representatives from faith-based groups here in town. There were representatives from the utility companies, representatives from the county. It's led by Chief Valentine. And we reviewed the tabletop exercise that we had a couple months ago, from which we learned a lot of gaps that we might have, or things that we need to improve, communication being foremost among them, perhaps. This all feeds in. This is all required, actually, for us to feed into the NIMS system that you mentioned, the emergency management system. And ultimately, when we do well, as we did, that helps us recoup dollars when it comes time, if we have a disaster, to apply for reimbursements. The one thing that came out of this, though, is the need for volunteers, which I kind of briefly mentioned in terms of the CERT team, but there's also a subset of that where we need volunteers for damage assessment after an event. And it's really not that hard. The chief says even I can learn how to do this. We're looking for people, it might be builders or contractors or engineers, but of course they're probably busy after a disaster because they're fixing up the houses. But if there's anybody out there in the ether who's listening to this, if you're retired and you want to volunteer to do this, we would certainly welcome you. You don't have to be a builder or contractor or an engineer. As I said, we can train you. It doesn't take a lot to do that, and this will help us again in the event, help the police to identify areas of need of attention, but also then help us to apply for reimbursements. So I missed anything, Chief? Did I get that right?
Very good.
Okay.
There's a big need for volunteers. This is not new.
So
Discuss this year after year after year here, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is that emergency response and recovery involves a lot more than just the police or a volunteer fire department and first aid squad working together. And with the Office of Emergency Management, we rely heavily on a partnership with organizations in town. You mentioned the faith-based groups. We've had meetings with businesses. We have resources in town that are available to us during emergencies. We've developed resource guides. We're constantly partnering with community resources, because the fact of the matter is, when things go really bad, we're on our own up here for a long time. We can't rely on resources and a great deal of assistance from the county. We can't rely on resources and a great deal of assistance from the state as a high priority when everybody's affected by a storm like Hurricane Sandy or a snowstorm or a blizzard. Everybody has their own problems, everybody has their own needs and concerns. And when you look at our population base up here, when you look at our critical infrastructure here, which is very localized, we don't have any hospitals, we don't have any major industry, we don't have any major highways that go through our town. When you start to line this up on the needs assessment, we're pretty low on that scale in the county. So our response is a local response. And we rely very heavily on the time and talent and treasures that we have inside our community. And many people have been very generous and assist with their time and their expertise, but we do need more people. We need more people to volunteer in our community emergency response team. We need more people to volunteer to be trained to staff our warming centers and cooling centers and work in a shelter in the event we would ever need one. We do need people for damage assessment, and we need people to take care of our pets and our animals during disasters when we vacate our homes and check into shelters, and the shelter's not a pet-friendly shelter. What do we do with our dogs? What do we do with our cats? And we need people to have interests in those areas. We've had people step up and volunteer to help us with technology. We need volunteers to work in the EOC, which is our emergency management or our emergency operating center that's activated during emergencies. And we need to partner with our employees and identify, talents and things that borough employees can be doing for us during an emergency response and post-disaster recovery period to help the borough maybe prioritize how they're spending their time and what they're doing, and direct it more towards immediate needs than what they maybe are used to traditionally dealing with. We have a lot of resources that might be available right here within the borough if people are identified and properly trained. You know, so if we can work towards that means and getting that kind of help and developing those kinds of partnerships, I think that we can go a long way to continuing to protect our citizens and protect our property in Bernardsville and take care of us, which is what we really need to be doing and making that a priority.
And I failed to mention that if you are interested, people are interested, and we're gonna make this a real project for this year. There are applications both on the borough website as well as the police department website, and so there's two different avenues. And I should mention also that Superintendent Gretchen Dempsey was part of this LEPIC, the Emergency Planning Committee, so that is a sort of a borough, a Board of Education collaboration there.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay,
Podcast
I
audience.
guess now we're ready for,
You never know,
How do we
Tim.
get to this?
If you watch,
The committee, right, is gonna work out.
I know how we get to them. TikTok.
okay, we have another open session. Anyone from the public want to be heard? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to go in executive?
I'll motion.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We're coming
Oh,
out.
we're coming out?
Oh, and we will come back out, yes. Yeah, got it, okay.
I'm gonna apply first.
Third.
Okay.
Resol-
All right, we are back in public session. Christine, you wanna move the resolutions?
I move to approve resolution number 20-76 to changing the status of Jeff Price from part-time to full-time. Anyone?
Second.
I'll move it.
No, it was moved. And then was second.
Second.
These are roll call, yes? Roll call.
We'll do roll call, yeah. Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Ms. Roday?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara?
Yes. Now I'll move number 20-77, approving additional hours for Chris Diasic as building subcode official.
Second.
Okay.
You know,
Roll call?
Ms. Zamara?
Yes.
Ms. Roday?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.